Chapter 42:19. Bang! Something seemed to explode in the air. A scream broke through the sky. Then, the entire space was filled with majestic and terrifying waves. Bang! Another sound of a heavy object falling to the ground. A figure fell heavily to the ground. The sand on the ground shook and smoke rolled. The person who fell to the ground twitched a few times on the ground, then stopped moving. Roar! A violent dragon roar was deafening. The sound waves formed rippled in the surroundings. The huge dragon body suddenly flew up into the sky. The dragon's body coiled and twisted in circles. The blue dragon's scales were like indestructible armor. The huge dragon head was raised high up in the sky. The dragon's might was unstoppable. Miss Bai! Miss Bai! 2 exclamations were heard. Hallmaster Wu Yan and the third elder had rushed to the direction covered by the smoke and dust. There, Bai Mei was bending her body in pain and there was a large pool of blood under her body. Their expressions changed slightly and the hands that were stretched out to support Bai Mei stopped. What was going on? Didn't the blue dragon willingly and obediently contract with Bai Mei? Why did it suddenly? What was going on? Not only the two of them were stunned. Everyone at the scene was dumbfounded. Only the man in a bamboo-colored brocade robe standing not far away, with a gentle face and a serious expression, had a look of understanding in his eyes. He wasn't surprised at all. As if he had already expected this outcome. He raised his head slightly. His gentle black eyes looked at the sky, at the body of the blue dragon that was coiled up. He squinted his eyes slightly. He could vaguely see, on the blue dragon, there was a slender figure standing against the wind. The flames were like fire. Extremely flirtatious. Suddenly he chuckled softly. Indeed, no matter when. No matter how dangerous the situation was. As long as it was her, she could always turn things around again. She always had the ability to trigger miracles. She was obviously already at a disadvantage. He only needed to take the last step to bring her back to the Palace of Darkness. A good hand of cards. But he was beaten to a pulp. In Gu Jingyu's eyes, it was hard to tell whether he was smiling or helpless. He was very clear. Now, he had already lost the initiative. He had also lost control of Yiqing Luo. Today's plan was destined to fail. His eyes stared deeply at the blue dragon for a while. Then he turned around and quietly disappeared. Everyone's attention was focused on Bai Mei, who had been sent flying. Moreover, he didn't notice that a person had already disappeared from the battlefield. Bai Mei collapsed to the ground. Even now, he still couldn't believe how he had been sent flying. Obviously, she had already reached her hand into the blue dragon's mouth. He was about to feed it his own blood. He could already form a contract with the blue dragon. But why did it become like this? Bai Mei widened her eyes. The young and beautiful face was slightly distorted. Her clothes were stained with fresh blood, and her face was also stained with blood, making her look extremely miserable. She looked at the blue dragon that had distanced itself from her unwillingly. That was her battle pet, her ah. Suddenly Bai Mei's eyes blinked. His face was filled with astonishment. Following that, he blinked fiercely as his eyes stared at a certain direction without blinking. After that, as though he had confirmed something, his face twisted and his eyes were filled with venomous hatred. Yiqing Luo. It's you, it's you. Her body was trembling from agitation. Chapter 42:20. When the dust dissipated. The figure standing on top of the blue dragon appeared clearly in front of everyone's eyes. Like a fiery red robe, a devastatingly beautiful face. Her lips curled into an unbridled cold smile. Wasn't it Yiqing Luo? It's her, how could it be her? Bai Mei's chest was filled with raging fury and disbelief. Yiqing Luo had obviously lost her strength. Yiqing Luo was obviously at her mercy earlier, unable to resist. Could it be that all of this was actually an act by her? Just to tease her? Bai Mei's mind was in a mess. Her malevolent face twisted as she bared her fangs and brandished her claws, trying to climb up and strangle Yiqing Luo to death. But the moment she moved, her entire body emitted a heart-wrenching pain, as though her bones were being smashed one by one. How dare you snatch my partner? The young lady's icy cold voice was filled with endless chill. Indistinctly, it was mixed with anger. She looked down at Bai Mei from above, her icy cold imposing manner pressured the surrounding air, as though it had solidified. Using me to threaten him, who gave you the guts to do so? Bai Mei's breathing congealed as her ears were filled with the young lady's icy cold words. This angle coincidentally met with Yiqing Luo's line of sight. She could clearly see that young lady's pair of flirtatious red eyes. Blood-colored eyes, the corners of her eyes rose, outlining a wavy flower tail. Amidst the flow of light, the red light flickered, resplendent and eye-catching. This kind of direct stare without any concealment. As compared to earlier when she met with Yi Qing Luo's gaze, it was even, making Bai Mei's heart tightened into a ball. Bai Mei's body shrank as her eyes swept around in terror, trying to find Gu Jingyu's figure to seek help. But her gaze surveyed the surroundings. But she didn't see Gu Jingyu's figure at all. Hall head Wu Yan and third elder stood by the side, looking at her with an extremely complicated expression. Bai Mei was infuriated as her face flushed an abnormal shade of red, as blood continued to rush to her head. "Help me up! Help me up immediately!" Hall head Wu Yan and third elder looked at each other in dismay, but no one moved. Bai Mei clenched her fists tightly as her entire body was trembling. "The both of you? Do you want to die? Don't think that I can't take the lives of the two of you in my current state." She clenched her teeth, enduring the pain in her body and the tearing pain, and sat up straight. He was in a sorry state. The blood was viscous. Her nose was filled with the thick smell of blood. She held it in with great difficulty, her voice extremely tense. "That dragon has already been stained with my blood. Forming a contract with it is only a matter of time. That belongs to me." "What?" Bai Mei lifted the hand that she had forcefully stuffed into the blue dragon's mouth. Then the flute of dark yin slid across his arm. The bite wound was enlarged a little. Warm and viscous blood gushed out quickly. Bai Mei's face was contorted. She gently placed the flute of umbra on the wound. Lowering her head, her trembling lips pressed against the flute of darkness. Everyone in the world group subconsciously held their breaths as they stared at Bai Mei with vigilance and pain. They were restless and wanted to snatch the flute of dark yin. However, when the sound of the flute rang out, everyone was in a daze. The heart-wrenching pain that they had imagined did not engulf their bodies and minds. The woman who was playing the flute continued to play. The dense evil yin qi slowly fused with the blood on her wound. The reason why Bai Mei played the flute of dark yin was not to torture them, but... Chapter 42:21. Oh no, lass. Old Man Song's anxious voice suddenly rang in Yi Qing Luo's mind. Bai Mei intends to use the dark yin flute's power to pollute this human dragon's heart. She wants to force a contract with the human dragon. Yi Qing Luo's eyes were fixed on Bai Mei's actions. A dense evil energy that was visible to the naked eye was constantly attacking Bai Mei's wound. Bai Mei's hand trembled even more. Even his forehead was dripping with sweat. Apparently when she used the evil qi, she didn't feel any better. But she didn't hesitate, nor did she hesitate. She continued to play the flute. "Lass, you must stop Bai Mei's actions immediately." Old Man Song continued. "Earlier, the human dragon indeed came into contact with Bai Mei's blood. This has some influence on the human dragon. If Bai Mei uses the dark yin flute to pollute the human dragon, there is a possibility. She can use the dark yin flute to control the human dragon to contract with her." Listening to Old Man Song's words, Yi Qing Luo frowned. She took a look at Bai Mei. Then he looked down at the blue dragon below him, whose body was continuously coiled up and turning. He could feel that. Right now he was already somewhat affected by it. Yi Qing Luo squatted down and placed one hand on the blue dragon's horn as she lowered her voice. "Ah Jean, stay awake, don't fall into Bai Mei's trap." Hearing her voice, the blue dragon's eyes blinked. His azure blue eyes seemed to be sparkling with water. The dragon's breath spurted and his beard fluttered. Yi Qing Luo continued, "I'll stop her. You're just stained with a little bit of her blood. I will try my best to erase the connection between you two." She paused as her red eyes revealed some determination. "What you need to do is to stabilize your rationality, stay awake and wait for me." "Ayo." The blue dragon let out a low growl. It was filled with majesty and one could tell that it was suppressing a huge amount of pain. Yi Qing Luo's vision turned. The red eyes were fixed on Bai Mei. She didn't hesitate. She leaped. The slender figure turned into a red shadow as it swept across the horizon. But in the blink of an eye, she was already standing in front of Bai Mei. Immediately, she raised her hand. The flame beast suddenly spread out. The majestic dark force blasted directly at Bai Mei. It was that simple and crude. Bang! There was a loud noise. When the dark force fell, Bai Mei blew the flute as she raised her eyes to take a look at Yi Qing Luo. Bai Mei had no intention of moving. There was almost no suspense in this attack. Her entire body exploded. But, in the blink of an eye, the blue dragon that was entrenched in the sky suddenly let out a low dragon roar. The massive dragon body seemed to have lost control as it surged forward and charged at Lin Fan. The dragon swayed its body. The dragon's tail flew. The blue dragon's scales shone with an indestructible light. All of it had taken on all of Yi Qing Luo's profound energy earlier. Zhan, Yi Qing Luo's pupils constricted abruptly as she swiftly kept her glower flame fan. Roar! The blue dragon raised his head and his voice sounded a little suppressed. The dragon's body began to twist uncontrollably again. It was as if he was fighting against something. Yi Qing Luo's expression instantly turned gloomy. He glared fiercely at Bai Mei. Generally speaking, humans wanted to contract with the beast race. Not only could they use their own blood to form a contract, blood was only used to build a bridge of communication between the two. Just like earlier, Bai Mei dripped her blood on the blue dragon. Chapter 42:22. But not only did Bai Mei drip a drop of blood on the blue dragon. Following that, she dripped some of her own blood into the blue dragon's mouth, borrowing the power of the Darkeen flute. Even the dragon clan would be affected by this. Yi Qing Luo's eyes turned slightly cold as a chilly intent flashed past. From the looks of it, she could only start from Bai Mei. Restrain Bai Mei and snatch the Darkeen flute. Then Bai Mei would lose her backing. Yi Qing Luo squinted her eyes as she sized Bai Mei up with a piercingly cold glare. Now Bai Mei was riddled with injuries and had lost too much blood. It wasn't difficult to subdue such a broken body. But Bai Mei could make use of the Darkeen flute to let the blue dragon block in front of her. If she were to strike too heavily, perhaps it would be the same as what happened earlier. The one who was injured might be the blue dragon. This was a little difficult. Yi Qing Luo pursed her lips slightly as she pondered on what she should do. Suddenly, that huge dragon which was blocking in front of Bai Mei let out a sharp roar. Following that, with an irresistible force, it charged towards Yi Qing Luo's face. The oncoming hurricane whizzed past his ears. Yi Qing Luo was slightly stunned. Towards the blue dragon's sudden action, she wasn't able to react in time. In her heart, she didn't feel that he would hurt her. The blue dragon's huge head stopped in front of Yi Qing Luo. Just one of his dragon heads was already the size of her. The azure blue dragon's eyes met hers without blinking. Between the ripples, that pair of dragon's eyes seemed to be transmitting some kind of message to her. But there was no time to think about it. The blue dragon's entrenched body suddenly started spiraling rapidly. Yi Qing Luo felt a warmth between her brows. Following that, there was something trying to drill into her brows. A gush of warmth spread from her brows into her body, enveloping her entire body. Inside his chest, the blood that would occasionally boil and the profound energy that attempted to rush out, under this warmth, gradually subsided. Some kind of energy slowly seeped into her limbs. Yi Qing Luo's long eyelashes fanned. Her eyes stared blankly at the blue dragon, whose head was aligned with her forehead. The blue dragon's body floated in front of her. She seemed to have understood something. His expression changed slightly. Zhan, you can't be, the words were left unsaid. His profound heart jade instantly felt a scorching hot sensation. It also carried a majestic power that shook her body. There was a buzzing sound in his mind. Her vision suddenly blurred. A short period of dizziness caused her delicate body to sway slightly, causing her to lose her balance. Swish, another piercing sound rang out. Ripples of red and blue intertwined profound waves spread out in the surrounding air. A warm current washed through every corner of his body. Yi Qing Luo could vaguely feel that something was stirring. It was as if he had caught something. But it was also a little blurry. She didn't know. What did he look like in front of everyone right now? The girl stood there steadily. His blazing red robe billowed in the strong wind, like an excited flame. 3,000 black hairs danced wildly in the wind. Like silk, it poured down in torrents. But, in front of her, that huge dragon's body was at the same level as her head. The blue profound light intertwined with the red glow released by the young girl. It looked elegant and holy. Ordinary people could not blaspheme it. No. Damn it. You can't contract it. It's mine, it's mine. Chapter 42:23. Roar. The majestic dragon's roar pierced through the heavens and earth. The dark clouds in the sky were pushed aside bit by bit. The land regained its brightness. The dragon's scales on the blue dragon's body glowed brilliantly as it flowed continuously. Yi Qing Luo felt a soft touch as it brushed past her hand. Immediately after, there was an invisible force that linked her and the blue dragon together. Her chest seemed to be surging with a tidal wave of energy. The warm current spread and the majestic energy scoured every single meridian in her body. Her limbs and bones were flowing endlessly. The scorching profound jade heart was flickering with a flickering red glow. Ajahn? Yiqing Luo's pink lips moved slightly as she softly spat out 2 words. Her body trembled again. Boundless energy waves surged into her body in a frenzy. Boom! There was a sudden jolt in his brain. Invisible profound waves spread out from Yiqing Luo's body. Her eyes suddenly opened wide. The alluring red glow was like a sharp blade as it shot out. Her hands clenched into fists as the profound waves were released one after another. Virtuous profound 5th grade. She had advanced. Thick and majestic profound energy vibrated in the surroundings. Bai Mei looked at this scene as she looked at the young lady's profound grade energy. The waves of profound waves spread out, stirring up a hurricane. Her entire face was distorted. Yiqing Luo. When she saw the blue dragon, she had wholeheartedly thought that the appearance of the blue dragon was the turning point in her life. This blue dragon already belonged to her. But that blue dragon actually took the initiative to choose Yiqing Luo, initiating the contract with her. That damn slut. It's her. It's her. Snatched away the blue dragon which belonged to her by Mei. Hatred surged in her heart. However, there was nowhere for him to vent his anger. Bai Mei's entire body was trembling. She glanced at those young men and women who were standing unsteadily not too far away. The cold glint in her eyes flashed past. Her hands unconsciously curled up a little. Earlier when Yiqing Luo stopped her from using the Darkeen flute to control the blue dragon, she didn't even have the energy to lift up the Darkeen flute and play it. Otherwise, as long as he had the flute of Darkeen, she could totally make use of the world group's people to threaten Yiqing Luo. Bai Mei's fingers struggled to move. However, he felt a stabbing pain all over his body and an intense pain of his internal organs being torn apart. She was so stunned that she couldn't muster up any strength. The girl stood on top of the blue dragon. After her advancement, her aura had undergone an earth-shattering transformation. That otherworldly face of hers was even more stunning. She was so high up, looking down at everything below. Bai Mei felt that in Yiqing Luo's eyes, she was like an ant which could be easily pinched to death. This knowledge caused the hatred in Bai Mei's heart to deepen. The tense atmosphere made Hall Chief Wu Yen and the third elder's hearts beat faster. They looked at each other. She also realized that Bai Mei wasn't Yiqing Luo's match. Even if Yiqing Luo was seriously injured previously and had no strength to move, but he had contracted a blue dragon. Not only that, but it had also advanced a grade. What could Bai Mei use to compete with Yiqing Luo? Thinking of this, the two of them immediately thought of a way out. Come here. Come here. Suddenly Bai Mei's weak voice was heard from the side. Hall Chief Wu Yen looked at the person who was lying on the ground, unable to climb up as his brows creased. Chapter 42-24. That roar. It shook her until her throat was dry as she started coughing violently. That pale face was flushed with an abnormal shade of red because of the coughing. She looked extremely disheveled. Hall Head Wu Yen sneered, Bai Mei, you're a defeated opponent of Yiqing Luo. What are you trying to do? Now you're the one begging us. This provocation made Bai Mei's face turn steely green. Her breathing became hurried. Her venomous eyes stared fiercely at Hall Head Wu Yen as her mouth opened and closed as she gritted her teeth. Do you think that if I die you'll be able to escape? Hall Head Wu Yan's expression turned stiff. Back at Linglong Palace, she and Yiqing Luo had already formed an enmity. Now, she followed Secluded Palace to scheme against Yiqing Luo. How could Yiqing Luo possibly let her off? She couldn't die. She had to return alive to save Fu. Third Elder's face turned slightly pale. She had already cooperated with Secluded Palace. Linglong Palace was already under DMO Shen's control, so there was no way for her to return. Now she could only rely on Secluded Palace to get what she wanted. And the only medium to contact Secluded Palace was Bai Mei. They had no other way out. The two of them exchanged glances and finally walked towards Bai Mei. Their expressions were extremely ugly, and when they walked to Bai Mei's side, they saw her covered in blood and in a disheveled state as they couldn't conceal the disgust in their eyes. Bai Mei was so angry that she was trembling as her expression turned extremely ugly. But she could only suppress the anger in her chest as she clenched the Darkeen flute in her hands. Do you want to leave this place alive? Their eyes shone as they squatted down. You have a way to let us leave this place? Blue Dragon's appearance. And Yiqing Luo's advancement. It had already reversed the advantage which they originally had. Previously, Yi Qing Luo had to listen to their control. Those kids in the world group were also under their control, unable to move. But now, it was going to be difficult for them to leave this place alive. Bai Mei struggled to raise the dark yin flute as the sharp cold glint faintly appeared. Use profound energy. Throw this flute into the sky. The people from secluded palace will bring us away. When she raised the dark yin flute, Hall Master Wu Yen and Third Elder's eyes flashed with obvious greed. Their eyes were glued to the flute of darkness. They could clearly see the power of this flute. Not only could he control those little kids with the sound of the flute, it could even be used as a weapon to hurt Yi Qing Luo. Even the palace master of Gloomy Palace was afraid of this flute. The two of them looked at the flute greedily, their lips curling up uncontrollably. Just throw the flute out? While asking, the two of them reached for the flute with their hands. Such obvious greed. Bai Mei naturally saw it, but she pretended not to see it. He raised the dark yin flute and placed it in front of the two of them. That's right. Throw it into the sky with profound energy. The people from the Palace of Darkness will rush over to save us. Hall Chief Wu Yen could not help but smile as he glanced at Third Elder from the corner of his eyes. Suddenly, he stretched out his hand and snatched the flute of dark yin. The Third Elder's face darkened. Hall Leader Wu Yen. This flute is mine, she said, reaching out to snatch it. Chapter 42-25. As she spoke, she bit her finger and smeared her blood on the flute of dark yin. Bitch. The Third Elder cursed angrily. But, just as he finished speaking, a voice suddenly rang out. Hall Leader Wu Yen suddenly let out a scream. Hall Leader Wu Yen, who had been grinning maliciously, twitched as he tried to throw the dark yin flute in his hand. But no matter how much she swung her hand, the flute seemed to be glued to her hand. The Third Elder's expression turned ugly as he quickly looked at Bai Mei, who was lying on the ground. Bai Mei did not show much surprise on her face. Looking at Hall Chief Wu Yan's lips curling into a cold smile, her heart skipped a beat. This was obviously, Bai Mei had done it on purpose. Bai Mei knew how greedy they were. He had purposely used the flute of dark yin. What was Bai Mei trying to do? Save me, save me. Hall Master Wu Yen screamed miserably as he tried to withdraw his hand from the dark yin flute. Cornered and despairing, she actually turned her head. He looked towards Yi Qing Luo's direction for help. Her face was filled with a twisted expression of pain. As though he had exhausted all the energy in his body, he walked towards Yi Qing Luo. She kept asking for help. Yi Qing Luo crossed her arms and stood on the eaves. A huge blue dragon coiled behind her. She had seen the interactions between Hall Chief Wu Yen, the Third Elder, and Bai Mei. He didn't stop her. He wanted to see what other tricks Bai Mei had up her sleeves. Gu Jingyu took advantage of the chaos to leave. Only the three of them were left here. She wanted to see if Bai Mei could still use that dark yin flute to stir up any waves. As for Bai Mei, Hall Chief Wu Yen, and the Third Elder, she never intended to let it go. Anyone who touches the reverse scale of a dragon will die. The brothers of the world group were her reverse scale. The three of them actually used the world group to threaten her. Touching the world group, she would not let a single one of them off. The young girl's bewitching eyes flickered with a bewitching red light, and a cold chill emerged. Her pink lips curled up into a mocking smile. That smile. Hall Master Wu Yen, who was crying for help, stopped in his tracks. His deathly pale face was filled with despair before death. She became even more anxious as she swung the flute of dark yin with all her might. But at this moment, Hall Chief Wu Yan's hand began to wither at a speed visible to the naked eye. Then it was her body, forelimbs, waist, lower body, as Hall Leader Wu Yen gradually dried up. The withered body seemed to have lost all support. With a thud, he fell to the ground. His head hit the ground heavily. Then it withered as well. The scream stopped abruptly. Hall Chief Wu Yen was right in front of everyone's eyes. Bit by bit, he had turned into a dried corpse. Clatter. The flute of dark yin fell to the ground. A dark and sinister aura lingered around the dark yin flute. It was as if he was resting contentedly after eating and drinking his fill. The Third Elder looked at the flute again. At this moment, there was no longer any greed in his heart. Her hair stood on end and a chill ran down her spine. Her entire body tensed up. If she had been the one to snatch the flute of dark yin just now, the person who had turned into a dried corpse now would be her. Bai Mei, that slut, was simply too vicious. What are you still standing there for? Pick up the flute. Bai Mei's voice came from behind. The Third Elder's body froze as he stared at the unmoving flute of dark yin on the ground, his entire body shivering. Chapter 42-26. As long as you don't have any crooked thoughts and attempt to form a blood pact with the Darkeen Flute, nothing will happen. Bai Mei's lips curled sinisterly. Third Elder's body tensed up as he broke out in cold sweat. Bai Mei knew right from the start that the Darkeen Flute would suck human blood. She intentionally took out the Darkeen Flute in order to lure their greedy hearts, using them as nourishment for the Darkeen Flute. After seeing Bai Mei's true colors, Third Elder didn't dare to believe Bai Mei's words so easily. Third Elder, you're the only person I can rely on now, how could I possibly let anything happen to you? Bai Mei could tell the fear in Third Elder's heart as she laughed softly. Only I can control the Darkeen Flute, give it to me. Then we will have a chance to leave. Third Elder's body tensed up. His face was filled with a struggling expression. She had no choice. There was no way out. Not trusting Bai Mei standing here. Facing Yiqing Luo, who had formed a contract with the Blue Dragon, she had no way to escape. Trusting Bai Mei, at least there was a chance of survival. After all, Bai Mei was already injured to the extent that she couldn't move. If Bai Mei could borrow the Darkeen Flute to bring her out of here, she still had a chance to make a comeback. Third Elder clenched his fists tightly as he suppressed the surging thoughts in his heart as he walked towards the Darkeen Flute. Passing Hall Head Wu Yan's dried corpse, Third Elder bent down and his fingers trembled as he picked up the Darkeen Flute. Suddenly a hurricane struck. Third Elder's fingers had not even touched the Darkeen Flute. That hurricane had already swept the Darkeen Flute away. Furthermore, that Hall Head Wu Yan's dried corpse was also brought towards a direction. Just like that, the Third Elder grabbed the dried skin with his hand. Third Elder was so shocked that he immediately let go as he retreated 2 steps backwards. That feeling in his hand had yet to dissipate. Third Elder's face was pale as he used all his might to wipe his hand on his body. As he wiped, his face was steely green with a tinge of fear as he stared fiercely at the direction where the Darkeen Flute had been swept away. The young lady stood on the roof with a smile as she waved the raging flame fan in her hands gently, meeting with Third Elder's vengeful gaze. Her smile became even more beautiful, like a flower. I've already given you a chance. Unfortunately, you didn't take it. Third Elder's face turned even paler. He was very clear that the opportunity which Yiqing Luo mentioned was referring to earlier when he didn't stop her and Hall Master Wu Yan from snatching the Darkeen Flute. If Yiqing Luo had stopped him earlier, there was a possibility that Hall Leader Wu Yan would not have died to the Darkeen Flute. Yiqing Luo moved her finger. The hurricane brought the glower flame fan directly in front of Yiqing Luo. Yiqing Luo. Bai Mei was so anxious that she sat up straight. The pain all over her body made her face pale. She broke out in a cold sweat and was so angry that her whole body was trembling. There seemed to be a fishy taste in his throat. She was angry, frustrated, and anxious. He spat out a large mouthful of blood. The Flute of Darkeen was her last hope. He seemed to have seen the killing intent in Bai Mei's eyes. Yiqing Luo's smile became even sweeter. Bai Mei, it's precisely because this is your last hope, so how could I possibly give you a chance to save your life? She tilted her head as her brows were filled with a smile, but it was mixed with a different emotion. I will not let you off. Her words had just ended. A strong, profound energy poured down in torrents. The surrounding air started to congeal into pieces of ice frost. The raging hurricane crazily stirred up everything in the surroundings. Bai Mei didn't even have the energy to move as she was instantly entangled in that hurricane. Chapter 42-27. But unfortunately, the lady who was entangled in the hurricane, there wasn't a single wound on her body. Not even a single drop of blood splattered out. Third Elder's pupils constricted abruptly. This hurricane, it wasn't Bai Mei's body that was hurt. It was her soul. Yiqing Luo wanted to torture Bai Mei's soul, to make Bai Mei suffer a fate worse than death. This method was even more painful than killing Bai Mei directly. Third Elder's face turned pale as beads of cold sweat dripped down from his forehead. No, absolutely could not go on like this. If Bai Mei was tortured to death, the next one would be her turn. She didn't want to die, didn't want to be tortured to death by Yiqing Luo. Third Elder was filled with fear. His gaze kept darting around. Suddenly his gaze was fixed on a certain spot. Her heart suddenly started beating faster. Her pupils constricted as her breathing hastened. In her heart, 2 voices kept on fighting. Must find a way to protect herself. She couldn't let Bai Mei die. If Bai Mei was alive, then she could live. Third Elder's eyes shot out a strong desire to live. His gaze carefully looked towards the direction of Yiqing Luo and the others. Taking advantage of the fact that everyone's attention was on Bai Mei, Third Elder restrained his presence as he quietly neared a certain spot. Her movements were extremely light and slow. It was completely silent. But she had neglected. Beside the young lady was a blue dragon which almost enveloped the heaven and earth. Third Elder was just nearing the eaves. A strong profound wave came crashing towards her. The blue dragon's tail fell in front of Third Elder with a bam. Third Elder's reaction was swift as he leaped and avoided the blue dragon's tail. But when the tail landed on the ground, it created a huge pit, sand and gravel flew and the aftershock shook. It also forced her to spit out a mouthful of blood. Blue Dragon's attack made everyone's gazes gathered over. But before he could even notice the Third Elder who had been sent flying to the side of the cliff, the Third Elder who had been thrown to the side, everyone was shocked by the sudden collapse of the eaves as they cried out in shock. The side of the cliff, the dilapidated temple, could not withstand the blue dragon's dragon might. The dragon's tail swung down. The aftershock. It made the shaky and broken temple collapse with a loud bang. Yiqing Luo who was standing on the eaves felt her feet lighten. The moment the ruined temple collapsed, the tip of his foot tapped lightly on the precipice beside it. Blue Dragon moved his body and caught the girl firmly. Was this gap? The Third Elder who was sent flying did not care about the pain from the fall. He clenched his teeth and fiercely pounced towards the ruins of the ruined temple. In front of death. All the pain was not worth mentioning. Gu Yuang who wanted to live, had already led Third Elder's brain to make the most direct move. Oh no. Qing Luo, that old woman wants to snatch that flute. Yan Xiaoyi was shocked by Third Elder's actions as she immediately shifted her attention away from Yiqing Luo. When he saw the Third Elder dive into the ruins with the black flute in his hand, his expression changed. Quick, stop her. Seeing this, Lu Xiaoyu immediately ran towards Third Elder. The rest of the world group's youngsters also jogged over. That flute had just sucked a living person into a dried corpse. It was also that flute which caused them to be in so much pain that they wished they were dead, suffering unspeakably. They still didn't know what tricks the secluded palace had done to their bodies. But they were very clear. As long as they destroyed that flute. Chapter 42-28. That flute must not return to Bai Mei's hands. When Third Elder grabbed the Darkeen flute, she felt an icy coldness in her palm. As though she was grabbing a piece of 1,000-year-old ice with her bare hands. The sinister qi which lingered above the flute seemed to have penetrated her skin and into her body. This unbearable feeling made Third Elder want to throw the flute in her hand out. But on seeing the 10 over youngsters chasing after her, and Bai Mei who was screaming miserably, Third Elder suppressed the fear which seeped out from her bones as she grabbed the Darkeen flute and sprinted towards Bai Mei's direction. Old woman. Put the flute down. Yan Xiaoyi had already chased up as she gathered a burst of profound energy in her palm and struck it down towards Third Elder. The other youngsters also rushed over in a group. They had just arrived at the Earth Realm and had yet to see Yiqing Luo when they were kidnapped by this group of people. The humiliation and torment were all vented out at this moment. Third Elder clenched her teeth tightly as the pain from her internal organs made her feel dizzy. At this moment she was surrounded by 10 over youngsters. She wanted to escape. But there was nothing she could do. She could only place her hopes on Bai Mei. She shouted at the lady who was lying on the ground as though she was dead, "Bai Mei, catch!" Saying that, she threw the Darkeen flute in her hands towards Bai Mei. The lady who was lying on the ground didn't move at all. Third Elder's eyes turned red from anxiety. "Bai Mei, this is our last chance. If you don't want to die, get up quickly." Dong. The sound of the Darkeen flute falling onto the ground was heard. Bai Mei's eyelashes fluttered. "Take that flute away." Yan Xiaoyi snatched the air and on seeing the flute being thrown away by Third Elder, she immediately reminded the youngster who was nearer to her. The youngster's reaction was very fast. When the Darkeen flute fell onto the ground, he had already pounced towards the flute. "If you don't want to die, get up quickly." These few words, if played back, kept echoing in Bai Mei's mind. Bai Mei was in so much pain that she couldn't move at all. However, her consciousness was constantly reminding her of this. When she heard Yan Xiaoyi's sharp shout, she could vaguely hear footsteps rushing towards her direction. Bai Mei didn't know where she got the strength from. He quickly got up from the ground. He pounced in the direction of the sound in a sorry state. She stretched out her arm, and the black flute was only a finger's distance away from her. "Just a little more, and I'll be able to touch it," Bai Mei took a deep breath and moved forward bit by bit. Suddenly, a pair of feet appeared in front of her. He stood beside the flute of dark yin. Bai Mei's breathing froze. Her face was pale as she narrowed her eyes and raised her head. In a daze, he saw a young figure. That young face was filled with resentment. When he saw Bai Mei raise her head, he purposely grinned evilly. Then, under Bai Mei's gaze, he picked up the flute of dark yin with a smile. But before his hand could touch the flute of dark yin, he heard Yi Qing Luo's hurried shout, "Don't touch the flute." The youth's movements froze. It was at this moment that he froze. Bai Mei lunged forward. Both her hands grabbed the flute of dark yin tightly. And this lunge made Bai Mei's energy depleted as blood gushed out in big mouthfuls. But she couldn't be bothered to adjust her body. Both her hands trembled as she held the flute of dark yin tightly. Her mouth, which was overflowing with blood, uncontrollably opened. Chapter 42-29. Be careful. Come back. At the instance when Bai Mei received the dark yin flute, Yi Qing Luo's expression changed slightly as she immediately opened her mouth to remind her. The youth did not hesitate at all. Immediately he moved away from Bai Mei's body. In the meantime, Bai Mei's body emanated a thick evil aura that resembled a thick black fog. In an instant it enveloped Bai Mei. The thick black fog spread out in all directions. It was like an open mouth swallowing everything around it. When Yi Qing Luo saw that, she leapt up from the blue dragon's back and landed in front of Bai Mei. The ghastly flame fan in his hand spun continuously like a wheel of wind and fire. The black fog was forced back. Yi Qing Luo stood very close to him. In addition, the hurricane created by the glowing flame fan continuously blew away the thick black fog. She could clearly see Bai Mei's appearance in the black mist. Bai Mei gripped the flute of dark yin tightly. The flute, which was filled with evil energy, had become extremely powerful after consuming human blood. The entire body of the flute was filled with a pressure that made one's heart sink. Endless evil energy poured into Bai Mei's body. The woman who was originally trembling and had no strength left. It actually burst forth with extremely powerful profound energy. Yi Qing Luo narrowed her eyes slightly as she gathered her profound energy onto the glower flame fan. This caused the hurricane to become even more violent. After that, she turned to look at the 10+ people behind her and instructed, "Xiao Yi, immediately lead everyone away from here and head to the Qiao mansion. If we leave, then you?" Yan Xiao Yi hesitantly opened her mouth. "She has the flute of dark yin." Yi Qing Luo shook her head at her. "Ah, Xian is at the Qiao residence and Qi Qi is also there. Both of you go with Shen Gui." Yan Xiao Yi pursed her lips tightly. The flute of dark yin returned to Bai Mei's hands. Bai Mei could make use of the dark yin flute to torture them and use it to threaten Yi Qing Luo. They stay here. It would implicate Yi Qing Luo. Hearing Yi Qing Luo mention Overlord, Yan Xiaoyi didn't hesitate any further as she bent over and pulled Tong Ziqing into her arms. Qiao Jin also called out to the world group and prepared to leave. However, just as they started to move, boom, swish swish swish, suddenly, a surging profound wave surged up from the bottom of the precipitous cliff. Boundless killing intent soared into the sky. Streaks of sharp saber chi and sword chi intertwined. Qiao Jin's expression changed. "Be careful," as the voice came out. His footsteps moved as his tall and slender figure swiftly moved in front of the world group brothers. He gathered dark force in his palms and formed a huge shield in front of him. Following that, many people dressed in black robes emerged from the bottom of the cliff. That was a disciple of the Palace of Gloom. Qiao Jin and the rest were no strangers to the disciples of Nether Palace. When they saw the black-clothed men appearing one after another, they subconsciously thought of the invulnerable monsters they saw in the Nirvana realm. "You want to leave?" A cold voice rang out. "Hee, you won't be able to escape." In the thick black fog, the woman who was originally powerless, slowly stood up. She held the flute of dark yin in one hand. His entire body was shrouded in a dense evil aura. With every move she made, the evil yin chi floated around her body along with her movements. Her entire person looked like an evil spirit which had crawled out from hell. It was extremely terrifying. It was Bai Mei. After she obtained the flute of dark yin, she merged the evil aura from the flute of dark yin with her own energy. Chapter 42-30. Bai Mei. The lady in front of her made Yi Qing Luo's slender brows creased as she felt an unknown pressure. This pressure didn't come from Bai Mei, but from the dark yin flute in her hands. Somehow she felt This flute, as compared to what she had seen previously, was even stranger. Was it because it had sucked human blood? All of you. None of you will be able to leave. Bai Mei giggled as her fingers which were holding onto the dark-green flute turned slightly white. Yi Qing Luo glanced sideways at those secluded palace's disciples who suddenly appeared. One by one after another. With a rough estimation there were at least 50 to 60 of them. One by one after they rushed up the mountain peak, they raised the weapons in their hands as they struck directly. In an instant they surrounded the World Group's brothers. They are normal cultivators, just take action directly. Yi Qing Luo squinted her eyes as her lips curled into a smile which didn't look like a smile. That calm and composed look totally didn't show any signs of panic from the arrival of secluded palace's helpers. On the contrary, her tone was relaxed as though she treated everything in front of her as a small quarrel. The World Group's brothers were ignited with battle intent by Yi Qing Luo's attitude. Their eyes were filled with excitement and agitation. To them, being young and rash wasn't a shortcoming, instead it was a motivation to motivate them. They hadn't seen Yi Qing Luo for a long time. Even when they heard that something had happened to Yi Qing Luo, they had no way to stay by her side. Now that they were finally able to return to Yi Qing Luo's side, they all wanted Yi Qing Luo to verify their recent improvements. All of them totally didn't care about their own injuries. Without caring, the dark yin flute had already returned to Bai Mei's hands. They swiftly drew out their weapons as they faced the secluded palace's disciples, fighting into a ball. Yi Qing Luo took a look at the crowd as her lips curled into an arc as it grew deeper. Even her slightly squinted eyes were curled upwards, outlining a rippling flower color. Finally her gaze fell on Bai Mei, who was shrouded in black mist. Bai Mei didn't seem to have the intention to continue fighting. Just as the secluded palace's disciples were pestering her, she took the opportunity to leave in the opposite direction. Apparently she wanted to take the opportunity to escape. Yi Qing Luo's brows rose as her eyes overflowed with ridicule. His feet moved and he was already flying towards Bai Mei. Bai Mei? Trying to escape? She was afraid that she had never experienced true despair. After thinking that there was hope, he fell into despair once more. That was true despair. Bai Mei probably did not know that she would be able to obtain the flute of Dark Yin again, if not for her deliberate indulgence. How could Bai Mei have such a chance? Yi Qing Luo sneered as her pink lips curled upwards. She had never thought of herself as a kind person. He had touched her reverse scale. He should pay the price for this. She would not let any of them go, including Gu Jingyu. Yi Qing Luo's smile grew increasingly devilish. She raised her hand, and the glowing flame fan at her fingertips obeyed her instructions. The majestic and intense Shen waves seemed to be able to shake the heavens and earth as they spread throughout the space. The precipitous cliffs around them shook and cracked. There were also boulders collapsing, erupting with rumbling sounds. Xingue, protect them. Ajan, fight with me. The young girl's sonorous voice was like thunder, striking everyone's heart. It gave the youths of the World Group even more boundless strength. They were fearless. He was not afraid of these extremely strong and difficult to deal with disciples of Nether Palace. Chapter 42-31. So what if this was the Earth Realm? They had already arrived at the Earth Realm and that was enough to prove that they already possessed the ability in the Earth Realm. They would absolutely not become Qing Luo's burden. The youngsters' eyes seemed to be filled with the flames of war. The blood in their bodies kept on boiling. The actions of their hands and the profound waves released. It also became more and more ferocious. Ayo! The dragon's roar shook the heaven and earth. The huge dragon's body charged straight into the clouds as it spiraled in the sky, covering the entire sky completely. It was tight and fierce as it charged downwards. The huge dragon's head emitted an overbearing dragon's might. As it charged towards Bai Mei, it actually shocked Bai Mei so much that the dark yin flute in her hands almost fell out. The dragon's might landed and accompanied by the young lady's clear voice, it reverberated through the sky. Bai Mei, you've spent so much effort to lure me here. Leaving in such a hurry, isn't it not good? Bai Mei clenched her teeth tightly as she raised the flute in her hands up high, blocking in front of her. The thick black fog formed a barrier, enveloping Bai Mei within it. The barrier and the dragon's might went against each other. In the sky, the young lady's fingers moved slightly as the glower flame fan was like a fairy scattering flowers, turning into a devilish sharp blade as it rained down towards Bai Mei. The dragon's might shook. The glower flame fan's profound waves pressed downwards. Bai Mei's hand which was holding onto the flute started to tremble, as though she couldn't hold on any longer. The thick black fog continued to spread in all directions. Oh no, if this carried on. She couldn't hold on any longer. She couldn't die. Bai Mei's breathing was hurried as she broke out in cold sweat. She injected all her energy into the dark yin flute. The dark yin flute, which had sucked human blood, coupled with Bai Mei's profound energy, caused the surroundings of the dark yin flute to tremble as the thick evil qi became even more intense. It almost swallowed Bai Mei entirely into the black fog. Protect Miss Bai. Among the secluded palace's disciples, a command rang. The secluded palace's disciples who were battling with the world group immediately swarmed over 10 people, blocking in front of Bai Mei. There were some who charged into the sky, totally disregarding the existence of the blue dragon to disturb Yiqing Luo. With the intervention of the secluded palace's disciples, Bai Mei finally had some breathing room. She raised her head to look at the high and mighty girl who seemed to be above the 9 heavens. Her bloodshot eyes were filled with deep resentment. Damn slut. Every single time in Yiqing Luo's hands she wasn't able to gain any advantage at all. He had clearly planned everything. But in the end they would always fail in various ways. Yiqing Luo, that slut, was fated to be with her by birth. Bai Mei clenched her fists so tightly that her fingers almost sank into the flute. One day she would definitely kill Yiqing Luo, torturing her bit by bit until she died without a burial ground. Bai Mei uttered these harsh words in her heart. While the Palace of Darkness disciple was still in front of him, he turned and ran. He had only taken 2 steps. Her peripheral vision caught a glimpse of the lady who was hiding in the corner, staring at Yiqing Luo with a face filled with terror. Bai Mei lowered her gaze and looked at the flute of dark yin in her hand. A glint flashed across his eyes. Then her body moved slightly and she quickly rushed to the corner. He reached out and pulled her up. "Bai, Miss Bai." Third Elder's eyes were filled with joy as he raised his head. She was really willing to save him. "You risked your life to send this flute of dark yin to me. If you want to leave, let's leave together." Bai Mei smiled at him. "Cheer up, the secluded palace's disciples will protect us as we leave." This smile of hers made Third Elder's heart filled with emotions. Chapter 42-32. After Bai Mei mentioned Third Elder, she turned her head and took a look at Yiqing Luo. She immediately raised the dark yin flute in her hands as a burst of dense evil qi burst forth. Looking at the huge black fog pouring into the bodies of the secluded palace's disciples. At the same time, it was like a huge wave that spread in all directions. Bai Mei then retracted her gaze. "Let's go." Yiqing Luo originally wanted to chase up, but she was forced to take a few steps back by the surging black fog. Those secluded palace's disciples who were injected with the evil qi had their skin mercilessly sliced by the glower flame fan's wind blades as they were blocking in front of her, causing immense pain. And under the dragon's might, they were unable to move. At this moment, a shocking roar exploded from their mouths. Green veins popped out on their foreheads. The muscles on their arms tensed up bit by bit. Green veins could be seen all over their bodies. The entire person looked extremely terrifying. Not only that, their abilities had also skyrocketed in this instance. It could be said that these secluded palace's disciples were now puppets controlled by the dark yin flute. Being blocked by these crazy secluded palace's disciples only took a few breaths' time. This had already given Bai Mei a chance to escape. Her fingertips swept. The glower flame fan fanned the secluded palace's disciples who were charging forward. Lowering her eyes, she looked at her hands which were stained with powder. She glanced sideways at the world group's brothers behind her and finally resisted the urge to chase after Bai Mei. What if it was another trap to lure the tiger away from the mountain? What if Bai Mei was forced into a corner and made use of the dark yin flute to torture the world group's brothers? What should they do? Forget it. She wasn't in a hurry to chase after them. Anyway, she had already scattered the soul-chasing powder on top of the dark yin flute. Within 3 days the soul-chasing powder would not dissipate. After settling these people and settling the world group's brothers, then following the soul-chasing powder to search for Bai Mei wasn't in a hurry. Yiqing Luo's lips curled slightly as she squinted her bewitching eyes. Her lips curled into an eerie arc. Kill. Bai Mei brought Third Elder and escaped. But that didn't mean that she would let these people, who had disturbed her, off. The world group's brothers, in addition to Yiqing Luo and Blue Dragon's cooperation, the disciples of secluded Darkness Palace were quickly defeated. Especially now that Bai Mei was far away, the flute of Dark Yin's control over them gradually weakened. In the end, they didn't even have the slightest chance to resist. After a while, The edge of the cliff was littered with corpses. The faces of the young boys and girls were filled with killing intent after a bloody battle. All of them were gasping for air. His entire body was covered in blood. But there was not the slightest hint of fear on his face. After the battle ended, all of them raised their heads and looked at the girl in the sky with smiles on their faces. Looking at those familiar faces, Yi Zichen's eyes widened. Yi Qingluo's heart softened a little. The corners of her mouth curled up into a smile. With a leap, she jumped down from the back of the blue dragon. He was immediately surrounded by more than 10 people. Madame Qingluo, we've won. We won. Reporting to Madame Qingluo for this mission, not a single one of them was left alive and there's not a single casualty on our side. Madame Qingluo, the youth's faces were brimming with excited smiles as though they were begging for praise. Yi Qingluo's gaze swept past everyone as she smiled and nodded her head. All of you are great and have improved greatly. He had obtained the girl's approval. The youngsters couldn't help but started cheering. The current atmosphere didn't look like it had just experienced a war. Chapter 42-33. Before that, she had personally seen Yi Qingluo's pale face. If it was according to Yi Qingluo's character, as early as when he saw them as hostages, hanging at the edge of the cliff, Yi Qingluo would make her move. But she sent Xianghu to save them. This made Yan Xiaoyi worried about Yi Qingluo's health. Yi Qingluo smiled as she placed her hand on Yan Xiaoyi's. Look at me, do I look like I have something on? Yan Xiaoyi pursed her lips. I just don't want you to put on a brave front in front of us. In order to be able to catch up to your footsteps, in order to be able to support you, we are all training very hard. So, no matter what happens to you, please try to rely on us. The smile in Yi Qingluo's eyes became even gentler, touched by their sincere feelings for her. She chuckled out gently and shook her head at them. I'm really fine now. It's all thanks to Ajan. Leader? Yan Xiaoyi stared blankly. Just now, in order to save the brothers, Captain fell down the cliff. It was Ziqing who rushed down to save Captain, but Ziqing was brought back by this blue dragon, but Captain, she bit her lower lip. No. Let's go to the bottom of the cliff and look for the leader. As she spoke, Yan Xiaoyi turned around and walked towards the cliff. Yi Qingluo immediately held her hand as she laughed lightly. Ajan is fine, don't worry. You know where the leader is? Yan Xiaoyi was startled and asked in surprise. Yi Qingluo pulled her along as she looked towards the blue dragon which was entrenched in the sky. The gigantic dragon circled around a few times. It slowly moved its dragon head towards Yi Qingluo's direction. The enormous dragon head and its azure eyes were extremely clear. Yan Xiaoyi stared at the dragon's head and met its eyes. Looking at Yi Qingluo smiling towards that blue dragon. Suddenly, a guess came to his mind. She was so shocked that her beautiful eyes widened bit by bit. Even his breathing quickened. The young lady's long and narrow eyes curved as she slowly extended her hand towards Lan Long. The voice of the girl rang out beside everyone's ears. Ajan, everyone's worried about you. Ajan? Madame Qingluo was shouting out group leader's name towards that blue dragon? What was going on? Everyone in the world group was astonished. Immediately after, a scene that made them even more confused appeared in front of them. Under everyone's watchful eyes, the gigantic dragon was surrounded by a blue gust of wind. Dark radiance shot out in all directions as blue light enveloped the area. When the blue light dissipated, the blue dragon had already disappeared. It was replaced by a slender figure. His black hair fluttered in the wind. His azure blue eyes were filled with fatigue, and his brows were also filled with exhaustion. Leader. It was the guild leader. It was the guild leader. Everyone looked at Long Yunzhan with their mouths agape. His heart suddenly beat extremely fast. They watched helplessly as the blue dragon became their regiment commander. Was this an illusion? Or, that blue dragon was their regiment commander? How could this be? That was a dragon. An incomparably noble dragon. How did he become a human? Even the azure dragon, one of the 4 sacred beasts, would not be able to transform into a human. Ajan. Yi Qingluo walked towards Long Yunzhan as she supported the swaying young man. Long Yunzhan shook his head at her as his vision lifted up towards the crowd, searching for someone's figure. Yi Qingluo supported Long Yunzhan as they arrived in front of the world group. Everyone was still in a daze. Chapter 42-34. Yan Xiaoyi regained her senses as she stared at Long Yunzhan and swallowed a mouthful of saliva. She was filled with questions and thousands of words. After meeting Long Yunzhan's expression, she only said one sentence. Ziqing is fine, Lulu has given her a medicinal pill and she's resting over there. Saying that, she stiffly raised her hand and pointed to the other side. The direction which Yan Xiaoyi pointed at, the crowd immediately dispersed. Long Yunzhan looked over. He saw Tong Ziqing, who was leaning on Baiming Lulu's leg with her eyes shut. The blood on her body had already stopped flowing. Her face was no longer as pale as before. He heaved a sigh of relief and at the same time, he leaned weakly against Yiqing Luo. Qiao Jin and the other youngsters hurriedly went up and helped Yiqing Luo to support Long Yunzhan. This was a reflexive action. After touching Long Yunzhan, the few of them turned stiff. Their minds unconsciously surfaced. That huge blue dragon earlier. That blue dragon was their group leader. Their group leader was a dragon. The youngsters supported Long Yunzhan as they were in a mess. Until Yan Xiaoyi spoke out and broke the deadlock. Cough. Qing Luo, you're saying, this group leader he is that blue dragon earlier? The youngsters immediately pricked up their ears. That pretended to be serious but obviously eavesdropping look made Yiqing Luo couldn't help but laugh out. Yes, your group leader is indeed that blue dragon earlier. It was one thing to understand in their hearts. Hearing Yiqing Luo admit it was another thing. Their eyes widened. Why? They and their group leader, from devil class till now, had not discovered that their group leader was a dragon? No matter what his identity is, he is still our group leader in the world group, isn't that so? Yiqing Luo smiled as she looked at everyone's shocked expressions. Yiqing Luo's words made everyone's shocked expression slowly recede. Their gazes turned towards Long Yunzhan. The huge stone in their hearts was suddenly put down. Right. No matter what the group leader's identity was, they were all their group leaders. Just like, no matter what secret Qing Luo had, they were all their Madame Qing Luo. As long as his heart with them was sincere, that was enough. Alright, Zhan has just completed his transformation, and his body will be in a weak state for a period of time. I'll bring you to the place where I'm staying in the Earth domain first. The youth's eyes lit up as if they had been injected with chicken blood. We can go to Madame Qing Luo's place in the Earth domain now. I'm finally one step closer to Madame Qing Luo. Our efforts have paid off. Happy, excited, listening to their playful words. Yiqing Luo felt that she was in a dream. His heart was filled with warmth. It had been a long time since there had been such a lively scene. He missed the time when he fought side by side with his brothers. Finally, he could see everyone. The few of them cheered as they followed behind Yiqing Luo, preparing to leave. Suddenly, a clear cry came from the sky. They saw a ball of fire rushing toward them at high speed. That figure was extremely fast. In the blink of an eye, it stopped at the edge of the cliff along with the hurricane. Qi Yan. Everyone in the world group recognized that noble and elegant vermilion bird as they cried out in surprise. Vermilion bird raised its head arrogantly as it threw the man in its claws onto the ground. That was Third Elder? Yiqing Luo's brows rose. She had not expected Qi Yan to capture Third Elder back. Chapter 42-35. It wasn't easy for her to escape, but she was caught back for no apparent reason. The crux was, she was the only one who was caught back. Yiqing Luo could already imagine what had happened earlier. Bai Mei brought Third Elder away wasn't because Third Elder had risked his life to send the Dark Yin flute into her hands. She had totally treated Third Elder as the next Hall Master Wu Yan. In case the Dark Yin flute's power wasn't enough, she could even have Third Elder as food to feed the Dark Yin flute. Moreover, if something were to happen, they could still use the Third Elder as a shield. So, after Qi Yan appeared, without any hesitation, Bai Mei tossed the Third Elder out. Looking at Third Elder who was rolling on the ground, the brothers of the world group all rushed up and stomped on him. Before Yiqing Luo came, it was this sanctimonious, benevolent-looking old woman who instigated Hall Master Wu Yan to torture them and humiliate them. Yiqing Luo didn't stop them from venting their anger. She looked at Qi Yan and raised her hand as she was about to caress Qi Yan's head. But it was slapped away by Qi Yan's wings. Even if you contracted this sacred beast's head is not something you can touch. Qi Yan snorted. She could tell that Qi Yan was angry. Yiqing Luo smiled as she took another step closer to Qi Yan. As she got closer, Qi Yan only moved his head but didn't move away. Yiqing Luo coaxed, "Little Qi Yan, don't be angry. I left you in the Linglong Palace, hoping that you can help me to awe those disobedient people in the Linglong Palace. After all, among my war pets, only little Qi Yanyu is the most suitable choice, isn't it? Before the palace master of the Linglong Palace died, before Dmo Xian appeared, he called out to the entire Linglong Hall to deal with her. At that time she summoned Qi Yan out. The might of the Crimson Flame sacred beast, in addition to its untamed and arrogant nature, completely disregarding everyone else's existence. It successfully suppressed most of the Linglong Hall's disciples. After that, Yiqing Luo didn't specially keep Qi Yan. She had not expected. Qi Yan actually looked for her at this moment. Its angry look was obviously because it was angry at her for forgetting it in the Linglong Palace Hall. He was also angry at her for not bringing her along when there was a need to bully others and show off. He knew his battle pet's personality very well. Yiqing Luo's coaxing made Qi Yan feel much better. However, she still raised her head arrogantly, putting on an arrogant and proud look, as if she didn't care about anyone. Yiqing Luo sighed. He could only coax his little ancestor. The people of the world group trampled and kicked Third Elder until he was on the verge of death before they stopped. After Long Yunzhan consumed the medicinal pill, he rested for a moment and recovered his strength. Yiqing Luo threw the dying Third Elder onto Xiangui's back. The Third Elder was in so much pain that he didn't even have the strength to make a sound. His eyes were wide open, silently begging for mercy. Yiqing Luo ignored him. Then he led his men away. He had just taken a few steps. She suddenly stopped in her tracks. The leisurely expression on his face suddenly turned serious. She stopped. Those brothers who were excitedly rushing over to the place where Yiqing Luo was staying in the boundary also stopped in their tracks. Yan Xiaoyi saw Yiqing Luo's ugly expression and realized that something was amiss as she asked softly, "What's the matter?" Chapter 42-36. Something's not right? Yan Xiaoyi subconsciously looked towards Qiao Jin beside her and hugged his arm. What's not right? Qiao Jin hugged her slender body as his gaze swept the surroundings. He didn't understand what Yiqing Luo meant when she said something was not right. Yiqing Luo didn't answer him directly. Her eyes scanned the surroundings alertly. The expression on her face became more and more grave. In the end, her entire body tensed up. Yes. Something was very wrong. She should have noticed this abnormality from the very beginning. It was only until now that she realized something was wrong. Yiqing Luo's slender fingers curled up tightly. Her long and narrow eyes swept the surroundings sharply. Since she was lured here by Gu Jingyu's The World Group. After so many things had happened, it had been at least 2 hours since the beginning. One must know. When she was in the Qiao residence. No matter how busy Dmo Xian was. He would definitely not leave her for 2 hours. Adding on, Chi went to look for Dmo Xian. Dmo Xian should have discovered that she was missing very soon. But until now Dmo Xian had yet to rush over. Actually, it wasn't that he didn't rush over. But he couldn't rush over. This cliff looked like an ordinary cliff. In actual fact, it had long set up an inescapable net. No one else could enter. She couldn't walk out. Otherwise. Earlier when Long Yunzhan transformed into a blue dragon, breaking through the 9 heavens, covering the heaven and earth. How was it possible that it wouldn't attract the attention of others in the earth realm? But it didn't. The commotion here was sensed by Qi Yan and through their contract he rushed over. How would Dmo Xian not sense it? So, Dmo Xian didn't rush over. He didn't sense the commotion here. It was entirely because this cliff had been completely sealed. Qing Luo, what's the matter? Seeing Yiqing Luo's expression turning uglier, Yan Xiaoyi tugged her arm as she asked worriedly. Yiqing Luo held her hand as she turned her head to look at Yan Xiaoyi, her expression solemn. We've been trapped here. Trapped. Yan Xiaoyi went into a blank. Don't tell me Secluded Palace has other tricks up their sleeves? It doesn't seem like Secluded Palace's way. Yiqing Luo wasn't sure where this feeling came from. But he could be sure. The power that purposely hid in the dark and sealed everything here was definitely not from the Dark Palace. If it was done by the Palace of Gloomy Darkness, Bai Mei would not have to flee in panic. Qi Yan would not have the chance to bring the Third Elder back. Because the Darkness Palace would not give her any chance to make a comeback. So, she wasn't the only one who had fallen into a trap. The Dark Nether Palace was probably schemed against too. At this moment, suddenly a gust of cold wind blew across the horizon. When it brushed past the crowd, everyone felt as if they were being targeted by a poisonous snake. The cold, sticky feeling was extremely disgusting. Yiqing Luo seemed to have understood something as the expression on her face suddenly changed. Swiftly opening up the glowing flame fan, it formed a red protective cover, enveloping the Brothers of the World group within. In the meantime, from all directions, eerie white bones that were stained with blood actually protruded out of the void. They were densely packed in the air. One after another. One after another. The joints were distinct and orderly. Not long later, it was like a densely packed spider web, enveloping everything in the surroundings. This scene made the World group's spines shiver uncontrollably. Their eyes were filled with disbelief as they looked at the scene in front of them. They couldn't help but rub their eyes fiercely. Chapter 4237. What was that thing? How could so many bloody bones appear out of thin air? These bones seemed to have their own consciousness. When he saw the densely packed bloody bones, he felt a chill run down his spine. Yiqing Luo already knew the other party's identity. Her face sank and she raised her head slightly. Her gaze landed on the bloody bone and she spoke in a low voice, "Barbaric Blood Bone King, what do you mean by this?" No matter how much she thought about it, she didn't think that the Blood Bone Barbarian King would be the one to stop her here. Previously in the Linglong Palace, the barbaric Blood Bone King knew that the Emperor of the Divine Emperor had passed away. He slumped to the ground. He had even given up on the Linglong Palace, which he had painstakingly built. How could it be at this time? He suddenly appeared again. According to her and Mo Xian's deductions, the Blood Bone Barbarian King wouldn't appear for a long time. "Little girl, we meet again." A middle-aged man's head popped out of the bloody bones that filled the sky. His handsome face was full of smiles. However, that smile made everyone's hair stand on end. Yiqing Luo raised her head and faced that head, her expression sunk slightly. "What do you want to do?" The barbaric Blood Bone King did not reply. Instead, he slid that head which was embedded in the blood bone towards Yiqing Luo along the blood bone, facing the red barrier formed by Yiqing Luo. Yiqing Luo's heart tightened as her fingers which were holding onto the glower flame fan tightened as she stared vigilantly at the barbaric Blood Bone King. Blood-boned barbaric King stopped at a distance away from Yiqing Luo's eyes and didn't move any further. He curled his lips. "Are you afraid of me?" At such a close distance, his eyes were not as sharp as when they first met. But it made Yiqing Luo feel an even heavier pressure. In the Linglong Palace, because the blood-boned barbaric King wanted to forcefully seize her body, it caused her profound strength to be sealed for a long period of time. If she hadn't formed a contract with Long Yunzhan today and borrowed the power of the contract to break through the blockage caused by the barbaric Blood Bone King in her body, perhaps now, Gu Jingyu or Bai Mei had taken her to the Dark Shadow Palace. As for the Blood Bone Barbarian King, Yiqing Luo still had some reservations in her heart. After all, he was a paragon god of the god world. They were not on the same level at all. If the barbaric Bloodbone King wanted her life, it was as easy as blowing off dust. Yiqing Luo did not reply. Barbaric Bloodbone King wasn't angry as he looked at Yiqing Luo's pair of vigilant eyes as his smile deepened. "It's a good thing that you're afraid of this god. If you're not afraid of this god, it's very easy to let this god accidentally play you to death." Then he chuckled. The bloody bones in the surroundings were like indestructible walls, surrounding Yiqing Luo and the rest, with Yiqing Luo's protective shield as the perimeter. The blood bones set up one after another blood skeleton frames around the protective shield. From time to time, thick blood would drip down. It looked extremely disgusting and terrifying. The pressure brought by the blood bone made Yiqing Luo feel as if her arm was being pressed by a tall mountain range. It was so heavy that she could hardly breathe. Qing Cheng's complexion turned extremely pale. "Qing Luo, what is that thing?" Lu Xiaoyu frowned as she looked at that strange head, her hair standing on end. "Your complexion doesn't look too good." Yan Xiaoyi stared at that head which was just inches away from her, while staring at Yiqing Luo's complexion. She wanted to help, but she didn't know how to help. The more anxious she was, the more restless her emotions were. She couldn't help but stretched out her hand and pinched Xiao Jin who was beside her. Chapter 4238. Reminiscing about the past? Would they use this kind of method to reminisce about the past? The other party was obviously doing it on purpose to create pressure to oppress Yiqing Luo. Anyone could tell that. This blood-bone monster with only a head was up to no good. Ha ha. Little brats, what she said is right. You guys, don't be too nervous. This god is merely reminiscing about the past with her. Hearing Jiqing Luo's words, blood-bone barbaric king seemed to be delighted. Using that rough voice, he laughed out loudly. This made the world group's faces turn steely green as they were filled with vigilance. Blood-bone barbaric king. Jiqing Luo's voice interrupted the barbaric blood-bone king's incessant laughter and also attracted the barbaric blood-bone king's gaze from the crowd behind him. Specially waiting for me here and sealing off everything here, surely it's not just to talk nonsense with me, right? Her eyes stared straight at blood-bone barbaric king. That seductive red glow in her eyes was emitting a suffocating energy. When it met the young lady's red eyes, the smile in blood-bone barbaric king's eyes became even deeper. The head which was embedded on the blood bone started to shake agitatedly. What you said is right. This god only has one motive for coming here. His voice paused slightly. Immediately after, he dragged out his intonation as he enunciated every single word clearly. This god wants to bring you away. Bring her away? Jiqing Luo's brows creased. You've also collaborated with the Nether Palace? What Nether Palace? This god wants to bring you away. Do I need other helpers? You've belittled this god. Blood-bone barbaric king's tone was extremely arrogant. He could tell. Towards the Nether Palace he was extremely unfamiliar. Not the Nether Palace. Then why did he want to bring her away for no apparent reason? Could it be wanted to snatch her body and head to God realm? Young lady, this god is no longer interested in your body. As though he could tell what Jiqing Luo was thinking about, blood-bone barbaric king laughed sinisterly. A head which was hanging on the blood bone revealed a huge smile. Anyone who saw it would feel apprehensive. Jiqing Luo suppressed the discomfort in her heart as she stared at blood-bone barbaric king. Then what do you want to do? She couldn't show any bit of panic. She panicked. The brothers behind him would also panic. Barbaric blood-bone king seemed to be able to see through Jiqing Luo's thoughts. His smiling gaze swept past the group of people behind Jiqing Luo. He licked his lips greedily. That look made Jiqing Luo instantly recall the time when she first met blood-bone barbaric king. The palace master of the Ling Long Palace, whose flesh and blood had been directly consumed by the barbaric blood-bone king. He couldn't be treating her brothers as food, right? This thought made the sharpness in Jiqing Luo's eyes froze. The energy in his body shook. The coquettish red glow around his body grew larger. He could vaguely hear a few kacha-kacha sounds. The blood bones and the energy released by Jiqing Luo were squeezing against each other. Don't waste your time. Barbaric blood-bone king looked at Jiqing Luo with a "you're overestimating yourself" expression, as he gave a smile which didn't look like a smile. If you obediently leave with this god will naturally let those unimportant people off. His motive was only Jiqing Luo. Besides, he was very picky when it came to food. Not just any random cat or dog, he would swallow it. Just like this bunch of kids in front of him. In his eyes they were still too young. But he could tell that Jiqing Luo cared a lot about these kids. He wanted Jiqing Luo to leave with him. Chapter 4239. As expected, Jiqing Luo's expression instantly sunk. Blood-bone barbaric king, I've left Xian for an entire 2 hours, he must be looking for me now. Are you sure you can bring me away? The barbaric blood-bone king raised his eyebrows as if he had heard a joke. Little girl, aren't you taking your husband too seriously? Why would I be afraid of him? Although the barbaric blood-bone king's tone was like that, but Jiqing Luo could hear the change in his emotions. This also meant that, in the barbaric blood-bone king's heart, Dmo Xian still had some influence on him. After all, Dmo Xian had directly pointed out his identity. Furthermore, he seemed to know everything that had happened between him and the Divine Emperor. As for him, he was completely unaware of Dmo Xian's identity. Towards Dmo Xian, the barbaric blood-bone king naturally had some restraining fear. Qing Luo, why are you still talking so much rubbish with him? Yan Xiaoyi heard the both of them exchanging words one after another, so how could she not understand what they meant? Her fiery temper flared up in an instant. You keep on saying that you want to bring Qing Luo away, have you ever asked for our opinion? She glared at the blood-bone barbarian king, her face full of anger. If it wasn't for Qiao Jin pulling her from behind, she would have rushed to the protective shield, pointed at the blood-bone barbarian king and scolded it. Even though Qiao Jin was pulling Yan Xiaoyi. But he had no intention of stopping Yan Xiaoyi's words. The faces of the world group's youngsters were filled with rage. How could they not be angry? Ever since they arrived at the Earth Realm, they had been duped by Gu Jingyu, becoming a tool to threaten Jiqing Luo. The Palace of Darkness wanted to make use of them. to make Yi Qing Luo listen obediently. But now, another so-called barbarian king of blood bones had arrived, attempting to use them to threaten Yi Qing Luo. They tried their best to climb to the earth boundary. The reason was to come to the earth realm and become Yi Qing Luo's left and right arm, to be able to become her backing. And not time and time again, causing Yi Qing Luo to fall into danger because of them. They had tempers too, okay? Super fierce. It was super fierce, alright? Everyone in the world group bared their teeth in anger. She listened to the brothers behind her, each and every one of them trying to protect her, unwilling to admit defeat. The expression between Yi Qing Luo's brows became gentler by several notches. Her pink lips curled into a faint smile. Her voice was gentle, but it could easily suppress their voices. It's fine, he can't take me away. The girl's clear and melodious voice was extremely pleasing to the ear. Like pearls falling onto a plate, it was very pleasant to hear. Qing Luo, we want to be your assistants and not a burden. Lu Xiaoyu raised her head as she looked at Yi Qing Luo with a resolute gaze. If that monster wants to bring you away, even if we have to risk our lives, we will absolutely not delay till the overlord arrives. Yi Qing Luo's smile grew softer. He wielded the glowing flame fan and formed a dazzling protective barrier. Along with her mood, it seemed to gradually expand. It was as if it was accumulating some kind of energy. Kacha kacha, the sound of blood and bones breaking continued without end. Yi Qing Luo's vision had been looking sideways at the brothers beside her. He did not notice, outside the protective shield, the head embedded in the bloody bones. At this moment, his expression was complicated, and his eyes seemed to be gathering some kind of emotion as he looked at her. That gaze. Passionate. It seemed as though he was looking at another person through her. Barbarian King of Blood Bones looked on and on. The expression on his face suddenly seemed to have been agitated as it became extremely distorted. Chapter 42-40. Bang. The barbaric Blood Bone King's face became increasingly distorted. The sound of the Blood Bone and Yi Qing Luo's defensive shield clashing against each other was getting more and more intense. Yi Qing Luo's body had already started to sway. It was obvious that he couldn't bear the pressure. The brothers of the world group saw this and were anxious in their hearts. He wanted to help, but he was worried that he would affect Yi Qing Luo. Barbaric Blood Bone King was obviously taking advantage of the situation to make Yi Qing Luo obediently listen to him. The gaze he used to look at Yi Qing Luo was filled with infatuation. But that craziness hid some other emotions. He stared at her intently. At the same time, he let out a sinister laugh. It was extremely horrifying. The Bloodbone Barbarian King deliberately increased his pressure. Yi Qing Luo forced her face to turn pale as she clenched her teeth tightly. Her arms felt as if she was carrying a 1,000-pound boulder. It was extremely heavy. He couldn't even stop himself from panting. It was very strenuous. It was extremely strenuous. The two forces collided. Yi Qing Luo deeply felt the disparity between herself and the barbaric Bloodbone Monarch, and the God Realm Supreme. Just like the last time in the Linglong Palace, the Bloodbone Barbarian King forcibly occupied her body. She, on the other hand, had no ability to resist at all. This kind of feeling was really unpleasant. He was still so far away from becoming a god. When would she be able to catch up with Xian? Yi Qing Luo's charming eyes exuded a biting cold. In the depths of his eyes, which were so dark that one couldn't see through them, there were some flames that no one could see through. She clenched her fists tightly. The profound jade heart within his body revolved crazily. It was the energy stored in his body after his advancement. It was slowly extracted by Yi Qing Luo. A powerful and majestic force, accompanied by a soaring momentum, lingered in the entire space. But even so, he still couldn't take it, the densely packed bloody bones that covered the sky and covered the earth. Even if the Blood-Bone Barbarian King wasn't in the divine world. Even if the barbaric Blood-Bone King was imprisoned here for some unknown reason. But his strength was far above Yi Qing Luo. Not to mention the blood flowing on the crisscrossing bloody bones was something that could corrode everything in the world. Boom! He could only hear a violent aura surging around him. With Yi Qing Luo's defensive cover as the center, a shapeless chi wave slowly spread out in all directions. The air shook violently. A terrifying burst of profound ray instantly blasted Yi Qing Luo's defensive shield into pieces. That blood bone with distinct joints and giving off a kacha sound pierced through the defensive barrier. The strangely shaped bone pierced right into the group of people from the world. Fortunately, everyone reacted quickly. He quickly dodged the sharp, blade-like bloody bones. What shocked everyone was, after the protective shield broke, a wave of coldness as if he was in an ice house, directly rushed towards him. The thick smell of blood in the air was nauseating. Everyone's faces instantly turned ashen. All of them quickly raised their hands and covered their mouths and noses. On seeing Yi Qing Luo's grave expression when facing this monster, they guessed that the other party would be a difficult opponent. However, he had never thought that the opponent's strength was actually so strong, so powerful that the confidence that they had picked up with great difficulty collapsed once again. Each and every one of them had an extremely ugly and pale expression on their faces. In this scene, it was exactly what the barbaric Bloodbone King wanted. On seeing that the defensive shield had been shattered. Chapter 42-41. The speed was so fast that no one could react in time. That bloody bone had already appeared beside Yi Qing Luo. Be careful. Yan Xiaoyi's fingers clenched tightly. A huge black sickle blade appeared in her palm. She slashed forward without any hesitation, blocking Yi Qing Luo's front. Bam! The blood bone and the black sickle blade collided. It gave off an earth-shattering profound wave. Yan Xiaoyi was directly sent flying by this powerful force. The black sickle blade in her hand was stabbed into the ground. Xiaoyi. Seeing Yan Xiaoyi being sent flying, Xiao Jin cried out sharply as he speedily moved his body and pounced forward. Stretching out his hand, he caught hold of her firmly and locked her in his arms. Xiao Jin lowered his head and saw the person in his arms with blood oozing out from the corner of her mouth. A sharp golden light flashed past his eyes. He stared furiously at Blood-Bone Barbarian King as he clenched his fists tightly, making a cracking sound. Wangfu family? Suddenly, Blood-Bone Barbarian King's gaze turned towards Xiao Jin as a smile flashed past his eyes. That smile had no profound meaning, but it was filled with a gloomy and cold aura. Xiao Jin frowned. When he was targeted by Blood-Bone Barbarian King, his entire body was filled with an extremely uncomfortable feeling. It was as though, like a prey which had been targeted. Blood-Bone Barbarian King. Xiao Jin didn't understand the meaning of Blood-Bone Barbarian King's smile. How would Yi Qing Luo, who had witnessed how Blood-Bone Barbarian King swallowed the Linglong Palace Lord, know about it? Her footwork moved as she pulled Xiao Jin and Yan Xiaoyi behind her. Her fingers gripped the glower flame fan tightly as she blocked Blood-Bone Barbarian King's gaze towards Xiao Jin. Blood-Bone Barbarian King was a supreme god in the god realm. How could her bunch of brothers be Blood-Bone Barbarian King's opponent? Don't worry, as long as you follow me obediently, I will not touch them. Blood-Bone Barbarian King's head swayed as his eyes shifted onto Yi Qing Luo. Yi Qing Luo's eyes sunk as she pursed her lips tightly and didn't respond. Yan Xiaoyi, who was nestled in Xiao Jin's arms, suddenly tugged Yi Qing Luo's sleeve. Qing Luo, don't think of compromising because of us again. Yi Qing Luo's weakness was that she was too sentimental and righteous. Yan Xiaoyi was afraid that she would act the same way as she did when she was facing Bai Mei. For them, he chose to put himself in danger. At that time, they were hung on the cliff and had no way to stop Yi Qing Luo. Now, they were all standing here, perfectly fine with the ability to fight. How could he possibly watch Yi Qing Luo being taken away by that monster? Yi Qing Luo was just about to open her mouth. Suddenly, the netherworld phoenix ring on his finger felt a burning sensation. Yi Qing Luo's eyes lit up. He looked down at his fingers. The profound phoenix ring flickered with a flickering light. The profound phoenix ring was reacting. This also meant that it was Xian. An uncontrollable smile surfaced on Yi Qing Luo's face. Qing Luo? Yan Xiaoyi, who was shocked by Yi Qing Luo's sudden smile, tightened her grip on her arm. She was slightly dazed. Don't worry, we will be fine. Xian had already rushed over, which meant that Xian had already broken through the enchantment set by Blood-Bone Barbarian King. But Yi Qing Luo's words had just ended. She heard Blood-Bone Barbarian King's deafening roar. Immediately following that, an overwhelming profound wave stirred up a monstrous wave. Yi Qing Luo's chest instantly felt stuffy as the relaxed expression on her face congealed. The glower flame fan swiftly opened up as a wave of air swept past. Chapter 42-42. At the instance when the energy was released, very quickly, another burst of profound wave charged downwards as it collided with her. Blood-Bone Barbaric King's attack was obviously much more ferocious than before. The powerful terrifying aura was totally unblockable. Damn it, Blood-Bone Barbaric King must have sensed that Diamo Xian was rushing over. So at the last minute, it launched a forceful attack. Xianghu. Yiqing Luo gave a shrill cry as she immediately leapt up and somersaulted upwards. Xianghu gave an earth-shattering beast roar. Its front claws slammed onto the ground several times. It splashed the shattered stones all over the ground like a raging storm. At the same time, Yiqing Luo's petite figure landed stably on Qi Yan's back. It turned into a fiery afterimage as it swept past. Xianghui's huge body was like a towering mountain as it enveloped the world group. Qing Luo, Qiao Jin and the others raised their heads as they looked towards the horizon at that fiery afterimage. Once again they were encircled by Yiqing Luo's protection. The sky was already covered by a fiery red glow. Qi Yan's phoenix feathers, which were overflowing with brilliant colors, were sparkling with a cold glint, as though it had been burnt by the raging flames. Sharp, unstoppable. The sharp claws brought along the raging flames which could burn everything in the world as it clawed towards Blood-Bone Barbaric King's head. The young lady's glower flame fan in her hands opened up elegantly. Numerous silver threads were like a fairy scattering flowers as it shot out in all directions as it wound around the intertwining blood bones. Blood-Bone Barbaric King's eyes were bloodshot as he looked at Yiqing Luo and Vermilion Bird's cooperation as he sneered, "Overestimating your own capabilities." Immediately the blood bones shrunk. A few kacha sounds were heard as the blood bones formed a solid shield as it blocked in front of his head. Qi Yan's sharp claws grabbed onto those blood bones. Then the blood bones were all broken. Countless thick blood started to flow out. Qi Yan gave a shrill cry as it spread its wings and flew into the sky. Whereas Yiqing Luo used the silver threads to wrap around the blood bones, and at this instance, it seemed like a bone-shrinking technique. Yiqing Luo's silver threads loosened. That blood bones turned into a sharp blade as it covered the sky and pierced towards Yiqing Luo. Qi Yan. Yiqing Luo lowered her head and looked at the thick blood on Qi Yan's claws. Her face turned green and her voice tightened. The barbaric Blood-Bone King was too sinister. Qi Yan's claws were being corroded by the blood of the Blood-Bone Barbarian King. The cries of the scarlet flame did not stop, and the flapping of its wings was extremely fast. However, his body swayed uncontrollably. In the face of the Blood-Bone Barbarian King's attack, he had no intention of dodging. Bang! A piece of blood bone struck Yiqing Luo's back. The strong force made Yiqing Luo's body tumble down from Qi Yan's back. Scarlet flame was exposed to the sharp blood bones. Clang! Qi Yan let out a cry and spread his wings. But the sky was filled with blood and bones. There was no place for scarlet flame to hide. In an instant, the densely packed bloody bones completely sealed scarlet flame. Crimson flame. The world group's youngsters who were blocked by Xianghui's protective shield all had bloodshot eyes as they howled in rage. Their eyes widened. He looked at the sky in disbelief. It was totally unbelievable. That arrogant and pampered vermilion bird, just like that, was swallowed by the blood bones. Whereas Yiqing Luo, who was struck by the blood bones, flew out. As she looked at the dangerous scene in the sky, her pale face started to break out in cold sweat. So close. So close. Just a moment's time. Chapter 42-43. Fortunately, at the last moment she used all her strength to keep the scarlet flame back into the pet space. She felt the scarlet flame's presence in the pet space. Yiqing Luo's heart then slowly relaxed a little. But following that, a new problem troubled her. Under the violent impact of the blood bone earlier, her 5 viscera and 6 bowels felt as if they had been shattered. In addition, during the thrilling moment, all her mental power was concentrated on summoning the vermilion bird. At this moment, Yiqing Luo only felt her chest was stuffy. Her figure swayed and fell straight down. Just at this moment, a tall figure quickly approached. Her waist suddenly tightened. Then he was firmly held down by a thick strength. Yiqing Luo's petite body was brought into a broad embrace. Purple flowing cloud long robe fluttered. Silver silk embroidered robe fluttering. Elegant sandalwood fragrance seeped into the nose, wrapping Yiqing Luo's body and mind. It also washed away Yiqing Luo's cold and austere. After touching that warmth, the young lady's tensed body also softened. "Ah Xian, you're here?" The young lady nestled in the man's arms, her hands circled the man's neck. Looking up, collided with that black as ink eyes. The man's eyes were flustered, anxious, and after seeing her, all kinds of emotions were all displayed in front of Yiqing Luo. Her heart suddenly softened. Not knowing why, a burst of sourness arose in her charming eyes. Her eyes actually turned red. Lil Luo looking at the young lady's slightly red eyes. Dimo Xian's heart felt as if it was pierced by a needle. He couldn't help but tighten his hands, rubbing her tightly into his arms. From the young lady's body, he absorbed her fragrance. His restless heart finally calmed down. All he wanted to do was to hug Yiqing Luo tightly, feeling her warmth by his side. He only wanted to hug Yiqing Luo tightly, feeling her warmth by his side. He couldn't imagine what kind of mood he had when he found out that Yiqing Luo was missing, looking for her. He also couldn't imagine, after completely unable to sense Yiqing Luo's breath, how flustered his heart was. Xian, sorry. Sorry. Yiqing Luo could feel the man's emitting emotions. She wrapped her arms around the man and pressed her head against his chest. It was her who had made Dimo Xian worried. Dimo Xian hugged her head and bent down to plant a kiss on her forehead. There was a smile on his face. It's good that you're fine. Fortunately, she returned to his side. The barbaric blood-bone king stared coldly at the two people who were embracing each other. There wasn't the slightest change in his expression because of Dimo Xian's appearance. His gaze was piercingly cold like a knife as it fell onto Yiqing Luo. A disdainful sneer came from his nose. Then the blood-bone surged with dark force. It was like a stormy sea rolling up wave after wave of huge waves. Without any hesitation, he headed towards Yiqing Luo and Dimo Xian's direction. Dimo Xian immediately tightened his grip around Yiqing Luo's waist as his sleeves fluttered. His sleeves were rolling like purple flowing clouds. They vibrated with a vast profound wave and collided with the blood-bone barbaric king's profound wave. After the two collided, the explosive force seemed to be able to destroy the heavens and earth. The entire space began to collapse. On the precipitous cliff, huge rocks started to fall downwards. The ground started to crack, forming large cracks. With Xian Gui protecting the world group, Yiqing Luo wasn't worried at all. Chapter 42-44. When the two forces collided with each other, she who was at a close distance could acutely feel the surging airwaves, vaguely a little strange. Before she could think carefully, suddenly, a face with a malicious smile appeared in front of him. The sticky and cold bloody bones touched her body. Yiqing Luo's expression sunk, her hand flipped, attempting to shake off the blood bone. But, when she released her profound energy, Yiqing Luo felt that the blood bone seemed to have a kind of suction force, firmly sucking her arm in. The sticky touch made Yiqing Luo's hair stand. She wanted to struggle. But on that blood bone, a thin layer of blood beads spread, starting from her arm. The smile on his face, which was so close to hers, grew colder and colder. Dimo Xian also realized something was wrong. He swiftly hooked the young lady's waist, chopping off the blood bone covering the young lady's arm. But that thick sticky blood was like a crystal-clear ornament, enveloping Yiqing Luo's entire arm. If Dimo Xian made a move, he would definitely hurt Yiqing Luo. Lil Luo Dimo Xian's pupils contracted as he grabbed the young lady's arm, stretching it out. That blood bone was like showing off, swaying on Yiqing Luo's arm. The thick blood was flowing along with it. Other than the sticky coldness which gave her goosebumps, Yiqing Luo didn't feel anything else. But Dimo Xian's eyes were scarlet red, the surrounding terrifying aura dispersed majestically. Bit by bit it spread to the entire space. His purple robe fluttered along with the strong wind. Yiqing Luo was just about to open her mouth to appease the man's emotions. Her peripheral vision suddenly fell behind Dimo Xian. Her pupils contracted as she cried out in alarm, "Be careful!" She was just about to open her glower flame fan, blocking Yiqing Luo's outstretched hand. But her wrist moved. It was a piercing pain. That blood bone seemed to have pierced into her bones, making her unable to muster up any strength at all. It was too late. Yiqing Luo's breathing paused as she quickly grabbed Dimo Xian's body, trying to change direction, blocking in front of him. But, the moment Yiqing Luo made a sound, Dimo Xian had already clasped her petite body tightly, pressing her firmly into his embrace. The sharp blood bone pierced straight into Dimo Xian's back. She did not know whether it was the blood on the bone or Dimo Xian's blood that oozed out. In an instant, the luxurious purple robe was covered with a dark shade. Ah Xian. Yiqing Luo's pupils dilated as she felt the man who was hugging her. His strength slightly pressed against her and her eyes turned red. She wanted to reach out and hug the man. However, his arm, which was stuck to the blood bone, was unable to move freely. He tried to force himself to move. It was a heart-wrenching pain. Shameless barbaric blood bone king. He knew that the two of them valued each other. So he intentionally hurt her to attract Dmo Xian's attention. She had angered Dmo Xian and he had placed all his attention on her. And then take the chance to lay hands on Dmo Xian. Because the barbaric blood bone king was well aware of this. Dmo Xian would reveal his back for her. She looked at the dark marks on the man's back. Yiqing Luo's eyes seemed to be sealed with a layer of frost. She clenched her teeth as though she had made up her mind. She looked down at her own arm, which was stuck to the blood bone, totally unable to move. Her eyes turned sharp. She raised one hand and turned it into a sharp ray, chopping downwards. Lil Luo, what are you doing? This action shocked Dmo Xian as he shouted out sharply, raising his hand to grab Yiqing Luo's raised hand. Chapter 42-45. Yiqing Luo pursed her lips tightly. Her eyes were bloodshot red. She didn't want it to be like this. But the Bloodbone Barbaric King obviously wanted to use the blood bones to control her. She hadn't forgotten until now how the Linglong Palace Lord was swallowed by these blood bones. She didn't want Dmo Xian to have any misgivings because of this. The man's breathing was getting heavier by the minute. Apparently it was because of the blood bone that had pierced into his body. What was scary was not the blood bone, but the thick blood on the blood bone. The blood that could corrode everything. If it entered a human's body, she didn't know what would happen. Thinking of the time at Linglong Palace when Dmo Xian blocked the blood on the blood bone, his flesh was corroded. Thinking of the red flame, the blood on the blood bone, the corroded sharp claws. Yiqing Luo's heart was in a mess. She suppressed the panic in her heart and called out Dmo Xian's name softly, while feeding the pill into his mouth. But the Bloodbone Barbaric King obviously didn't give them a chance to breathe. After seeing Dmo Xian was hurt, he laughed sinisterly. Immediately it drove the densely packed blood bones to crazily entangle. The Bloodbone Barbaric King's target had always been very firm. Yiqing Luo only felt that the blood bone on her arm was like a big mouth, biting her hand tightly. She cried out in pain. Her body was suddenly pulled. The other arm, which was clasped in Dmo Xian's palm, slipped from the man's hand. Dmo Xian's eyes were sharp and he wanted to hold the young lady's hand again. Yiqing Luo's heart trembled and immediately put her hand over to Dmo Xian's stretched out hand. But their fingers just brushed past. The densely packed blood bones were like a woven big net, enveloping the two of them, separating Yiqing Luo and Dmo Xian completely. Immediately following that, Yiqing Luo's body was suddenly pulled. Her back hit the hard blood bone. She was firmly fixed in place. The sticky cold touch spread all over her body. That head, which was embedded in the blood bone, followed the distinct joints of the blood bone and slid in front of Yiqing Luo. Such a close distance. He was so close that he could feel the Bloodbone Barbarian King's cold aura on his face. The barbaric Bloodbone Monarch stared straight at her and smiled triumphantly. "Little girl. In the end, you won't be able to escape from my grasp." As his words fell, Yiqing Luo's intuition told her that horrifying face, which was just inches away from her, cracked into a treacherous smile. In the next instant her vision turned black. His mind suddenly became blank. Vaguely they seemed to hear Dmo Xian's cold and dignified voice. She could vaguely see a purple figure walking toward her. Bloodbone Barbarian King. "You dare to hurt her, even if this lord ascends to the heavens or dives into the earth, I will definitely crush your bones and scatter your ashes." Dmo Xian clutched his chest, his face filled with malevolent rage. The Bloodbone Barbaric King's eyes swept across the young girl's face, which was as clean as a baby's. "Since you know about this god's matters, you should also know, how could this god bear to hurt her?" Dmo Xian's face was solemn and cold, a bloodthirsty murderous intent flashed past his eyes, his 5 fingers clenched so tightly that a cracking sound could be heard. The Bloodbone Barbarian King sneered. The sky was filled with blood bones, like a cicada's pupa, covering Yiqing Luo's delicate body. Immediately after, just like how it came, quietly disappeared in front of everyone's eyes. The black fog which covered the sky gradually dispersed, revealing a bright light. The moment Xiangui's protective shield was released. Chapter 42-46. However, the only thing they could touch was air. As though everything earlier was just an illusion. Everyone's eyes were red as their fists were clenched tightly by the sides, as their chests were filled with resentment and suppression. He watched helplessly as Yiqing Luo was brought away. But they had no way at all. This kind of them. What rights did they have to become Yiqing Luo's backing? Yiqing Luo's backing. Overlord. The World Group's young man's voice was hoarse as he placed all his hopes on Diamo Xian. Madame Qing Luo, she will be fine, right? Just as he said that. Then she was pulled by someone forcefully, stopping the young man from asking any further questions. Lu Xiaoyu pulled him back as she suppressed her voice. Don't poke the Overlord's heart. Something happened to Qing Luo. He is more anxious and upset than any of us. That's right. In this world, no one loved their Madame Qing Luo more than the Overlord. Even if it was themselves, they couldn't be compared to the Overlord's affection. No. There was no comparison at all. The World Group suppressed the churning anxiety and uneasiness in their hearts as they looked at the man who stood stiffly on the spot, not moving at all. Even though the man didn't say a word. His expression didn't have any change at all. Everyone could feel. From the man's body, a deep magnetic field was emitted, as though it was going to envelop the entire world in darkness. Not knowing how much time had passed, Yiqing Luo slowly opened her eyes in her drowsiness. Perhaps she had been unconscious for too long. The minute she opened her eyes, her head started to feel an intense dizziness. So much that she couldn't help but shut her eyes tightly. Her glabella started to ache faintly. After recuperating for some time, she then felt slightly more comfortable as she tried to open her eyes again. Other than feeling weak and powerless, she didn't feel any other discomfort. Her throat was about to emit smoke as she felt extremely uncomfortable. She raised her hand and was just about to get up. A pair of soft little hands had already held onto both of her hands. Immediately following that was a lady's gentle and respectful voice. Eldest young miss, you're finally awake. When her hands were held by that soft little hand, Yiqing Luo's heart trembled. He actually wasn't able to avoid this person's hand earlier? Yiqing Luo's body stiffened, causing the lady to ask concernedly, Eldest young miss, are you feeling uncomfortable anywhere? This servant will immediately call the doctor. Yiqing Luo's eyelashes fluttered as she sat up straight with the lady's support. She saw a girl in peach-colored clothes standing by the bed. She looked to be about 18 or 19 years old and was looking at her with concern. He passed by the woman. This was an extremely luxurious room. The furnishings in the room were both noble and elegant. She frowned and stared at the woman. You are? As soon as he opened his mouth, his voice was as hoarse as a sawtooth. She coughed violently several times. The lady hurriedly brought a cup of warm water from the side and sent it to Yiqing Luo's lips while apologizing in a low voice. Eldest young miss, it's my fault for not taking good care of you. The water that entered her mouth was sweet and smooth. In an instant, his dry throat was moisturized and revitalized. The lady carefully supported Yiqing Luo to lean against the head of the bed and with a plop sound, she knelt on the ground and kowtowed fiercely. Eldest young miss, please spare me this time. Yiqing Luo's head ached a little as she was baffled by this scene. Chapter 42-47. The lady carefully raised her eyes and took a look at Yiqing Luo. Seeing that she didn't have any intention to blame, and seeing her tightly knitted brows, she went forward to massage her head. The lady's technique was skillful and skillful. It made Yiqing Luo feel very comfortable. The lady spoke softly, Eldest Miss, servant Gu Yun is the first household's maid who serves Eldest Mississippi. Yiqing Luo had a bad premonition. What is this place? This is Bone Lord's residence. Gu Yun replied warmly. Bone Lord? Yiqing Luo's brows thumped as she suddenly opened her eyes and grabbed the two hands which were pressing on her temples. The Bone Lord you mentioned is Blood Bone Barbaric King? Sure. Gu Yun's eyes widened as she carefully looked to the side. After confirming that there was no one else around, she whispered, In the residence, you must not mention this word. If Bone Lord heard this, even Eldest Miss might not be able to persuade him. Which meant? The Bone Lord that Gu Yun mentioned was Blood Bone Barbaric King. What on earth was going on? What was the Blood Bone Barbaric King trying to do by bringing her to this residence? Eldest Miss, don't panic. I will inform Eldest Miss about the matters in the Bone residence. As long as Eldest Miss doesn't touch Bone Lord's bottom line, he will not bear to punish Eldest Mississippi, Gu Yun said smilingly. Yiqing Luo? The current situation was a little confusing and she needed time to digest it. Eldest Miss must be hungry? I will bring the porridge up immediately. Gu Yun retracted her hand from Yiqing Luo's. She got up and ran to the outer hall to bring the porridge. Yiqing Luo's fingers grabbed. She lowered her eyes and looked at her empty hand. The expression on her face was somewhat grave. What was wrong with her? Not only could Gu Yun easily hold her hand, but she could also hold her hand. She could also easily break free from her hand. Could it be? Yiqing Luo had a vague guess. She closed her eyes slightly and revolved her profound jade heart. Indeed, it was empty. Her body was empty without the slightest fluctuation of energy. She clenched her fist and there was no fluctuation of profound wave in her palm. Her energy had disappeared once again. This time, not only was she unable to activate the divine relic, even his own pet space could not sense it. Moreover, she was unable to sense the existence of Old Man Tsang within the Azure Dew bracelet. It was as if she was just an ordinary person right now. Apart from not being able to use profound strength. Apart from being unable to control the profound energy. She had no discomfort anywhere else. This knowledge made Yiqing Luo's brows creased even tighter. There was no need to guess. This must be the doing of the barbaric Bloodbone King. What exactly does he want to do? Brought her to his territory. He even arranged for a maid to serve him? You're finally awake. Suddenly, a shrill voice came from the quilt. The voice was somewhat familiar, and the tone was also so familiar that it made people want to beat him up. Yiqing Luo lifted the blanket. A little red head popped out from the bedding. That sharp mouth directly poked the back of Yiqing Luo's hand. Why are you so useless? That peck did not hurt at all. Yiqing Luo stared at the red bird about the size of 2 palms in front of her, startled. Qi Yan, you're here too? Qi Yan rolled his eyes in a bird style. This sacred beast is doing this for you. Yiqing Luo hurriedly carried Qi Yan out from the quilt. Her gaze was fixed on its pair of claws. As expected. Chapter 42-48. Yiqing Luo's pupils constricted. Her slender fingers gently touched Qi Yan's claws. However, even after a long time he still couldn't touch its claws. Because of fear and because of guilt. Hey, ugly woman, what's with that expression? You're already ugly enough, now you look even uglier. Qi Yan flapped its wings, its tone was full of disgust. But as it complained, it flapped its wings and straightened its little body, its red eyes looked at her. This sacred beast is not as weak as you want to laugh. This little injury won't kill me. Although the words were not pleasant to hear. But it was obvious that she could feel it. Qi Yan didn't want her to worry too much, to feel too guilty. Yiqing Luo pursed her lips tightly, her hand slowly covered Qi Yan's body. The fiery phoenix feathers were extremely soft. She asked in a slightly trembling voice, does it hurt? No. Qi Yan raised its long neck. Yiqing Luo gently took the little bird into her arms. Her lips were printed on Qi Yan's little head. Qi Yan was stunned and wanted to struggle. An extremely low and shallow voice floated down from the top of its head, making its body and mind soften. Don't worry. I will definitely avenge you. No one can hurt my companion. No one can. Companion. Qi Yan's red eyes were in a trance for a moment. No one had ever treated it as a companion, as a sacred beast. This woman. Although she was a little ugly, a little weak, a little useless. But she was its chosen master. And after all, she had her merits. Eldest miss, the porridge is here, let me serve you some porridge. Outside the door, Gu Yun walked to the bedside with a jade porcelain bowl. When her gaze fell on Qi Yan, she smiled. Eldest miss, don't worry, your pet, Bone Lord has already treated it, it will recover in a few days. Yiqing Luo frowned slightly. Qi Yan's claws became like this, wasn't it because of Blood-Bone Barbaric King? Blood-Bone Barbaric King would treat Qi Yan's claws? It was indeed him who treated me. Qi Yan's voice was a little dull, obviously embarrassed. It was also very puzzled. Injured by Blood-Bone Barbaric King. The Blood-Bone Barbarian King had cured him again. Could this be considered as giving a sweet date after a slap in the face? Eldest miss, Bone Lord still dotes on you. Gu Yun carried a bowl of porridge and came to the bedside. This is the first time this servant has seen Bone Lord attach so much importance to someone. Yiqing Luo stopped Gu Yun from feeding the spoon to her mouth. I'll do it myself. Be careful, it's hot. Gu Yun did not insist. Yiqing Luo took the small bowl and looked down at the medicinal porridge in the bowl. The fragrance was rich and extremely appetizing. Faintly, there was also a hint of the smell of medicinal herbs. It could be seen that extremely precious medicinal ingredients were used to boil the fire to a sufficient degree. As she drank, she looked at Gu Yun. Blood bone, she had only spat out 2 words when she was stopped by Gu Yi's gaze. Yiqing Luo recalled what Gu Yun had said in this place. The barbaric blood king didn't like to hear the 4 words, barbaric blood king. She pursed her lips and continued to ask, "Where is he? I want to see him." Chapter 42-49. Taking care of her? Hearing this sentence, Yiqing Luo felt her hair standing on end. From the beginning, Gu Yun had used various phrases like, Bone Lord values you, Bone Lord dotes on you, and so on. Yiqing Luo was almost suspicious. That so-called Bone Lord and Blood Bone Barbaric King were not the same person. After finishing a bowl of porridge, Yiqing Luo's stomach finally didn't feel empty anymore. Her strength had also recovered a lot. She passed the bowl back to Gu Yun and lifted the blanket. She looked down at her sweaty clothes. Gu Yun put the bowl to the side and asked with great insight, "Miss, do you want to take a bath? I'll go prepare now." Yiqing Luo nodded. According to Gu Yun, she had been unconscious here for 2 days. Early on at the cliff, she was entangled with Bai Mei and the rest, and then there was Blood Bone Barbaric King. Her body was already sticky. After the bath, she braced herself and went out to see what kind of place this was. Gu Yun first left the room and came back after about the time it took for a stick of incense to burn. Behind her were 4 maids in uniform. Each of them held a tray with the necessities for bathing. "Eldest miss, please follow me." Gu Yun helped Yiqing Luo put on an outer robe and supported her arm. After walking out of the room, what came into sight was an extremely spacious loft. The trees were lush and verdant. A pond of clear spring was located on a rockery. At first glance, it was elegant and noble without losing its style. Just by looking at it, one would feel comfortable. The person who built this loft had good taste. Following Gu Yun, they turned into another long corridor. Along the way, they didn't see anyone else. When they reached the bathing area, the 4 maids neatly placed the things and left. Only Gu Yun supported Yiqing Luo to the side of the pool. In the pool, a thin mist curled up in spirals. Above the pool, there were pieces of flower petals floating, and mixed with a light medicine box. When the medicine entered her nose, Yiqing Luo could tell what medicinal herbs were placed in the pool. They were all medicinal herbs to strengthen the body and recuperate the body. How considerate. Yiqing Luo rejected Gu Yun's service and let her wait at the door. Stripping off her robe, Yiqing Luo stepped into the pool. The warm water washed away her fatigue. The faint fragrance of herbs and flowers lingered in the air. She closed her eyes comfortably. On the side of Qi Yan, a head popped out of his clothes. When Xiao Qin saw the young girl's face covered by the mist in the pool, her red phoenix feathers seemed to turn even redder. His little wings could not help but flutter a few times. "Qi Yan." In the hot spring, the girl's voice seemed to be covered with a layer of water vapor. Qi Yan's phoenix feathers trembled. "This holy beast didn't peek at you. Yiqing Luo. You're just a bird, so what if you peeked?" She turned over, put her hands beside the soup pool, and looked at Qi Yan through the dense mist. "I want to ask you what happened after I was in a coma?" He woke up. She came to a strange place. Meeting a stranger. She even became the so-called young Mississippi. She didn't understand what the blood-bone barbaric king wanted to do. Qi Yan was silent for a moment and shook his head. "I was originally healing my legs in the pet space, but suddenly I was forcibly sucked out of the pet space by a force, and then I saw the blood-bone barbarian king." Chapter 42-50. Yiqing Luo's expression changed slightly. She understood the meaning of Bloodbone Barbaric King's words. In this unfamiliar place, Bloodbone Barbaric King had used some unknown method to make her lose her profound energy. Even her own divine weapon and anything that needed to be connected were all sealed. Except for Qi Yan. She really had nothing left. Bloodbone Barbaric King would choose Qi Yan. It was probably because Qi Yan's claws had been corroded by his blood. Even though he had treated Qi Yan. In a short period of time, Qi Yan didn't have the ability to fight. Qi Yan replied, "After he treated me, he threw me onto you," and then instructed others. "You are the eldest missy of this Gu residence." After a pause, it added, "What Gu Yun said earlier was not wrong. During the 2 days when you were unconscious, he indeed did not spare any effort to take care of you." Yiqing Luo? Yiqing Luo really couldn't understand this operation. Qi Yan rolled one round on the ground and rolled to the side of the pool. The red phoenix feather hit Yiqing Luo's arm, which was propped up on the pool. The warm water wetted its phoenix feather. It used its sharp beak to peck Yiqing Luo's arm. That's right, blood-boned barbaric king? May have some thoughts towards you. Thoughts? Yiqing Luo's slender fingers pinched its messy mouth. What do you mean? Qi Yin shook its head and broke free from Yiqing Luo's hand. It's you humans. The kind of thoughts a man has towards a woman, the kind of thoughts the Overlord has towards you. Yiqing Luo? Yiqing Luo rubbed her arm. Hashtag forming a CP with a head? Hashtag blood-boned barbaric king only had a head. And that age was right there. What kind of thoughts did a man have towards a woman? Qi Yin rolled his eyes at her. Who told you that blood-boned barbaric king's appearance only has a head? He has a body? Yiqing Luo had only seen blood-boned barbaric king twice, and both times it was just a head, with densely packed blood bones. Qi Yin, since he can freely control the blood bones, naturally he can use the blood bones to build a suitable body for himself. Yiqing Luo. Alright, I've learned something new. This is indeed the world of the big shots. Qi Yin raised his mouth again and poked her. Although I don't understand the love between you human beings, I have been influenced by you and the Overlord. In the past 2 days, the barbaric blood-bone king has been staring at you in the dead of night when there's no one around. That gaze. Tisk, it's like the gaze of a venerable emperor staring at you. Yiqing Luo was stunned. Suddenly, the scene of him facing off against the blood-bone barbarian king at the edge of the cliff surfaced in his mind. The barbaric blood-bone king looked at her. It was indeed strange. It was as if she was his most prized possession. At that time she didn't think too much about it. Now that he thought about it, it was indeed a little strange. But what Yiqing Luo could confirm was, the blood-bone barbarian king's feelings for her were definitely not what Qi Yin had said, the so-called feelings between a man and a woman. As for what kind of feeling it was, at the moment she had no way of knowing. I can only wait until I see the blood-bone barbarian king and ask him personally. Qi Yin continued to talk about what happened when Yiqing Luo was in a coma. It was nothing more than... The barbaric blood-bone barbarian king indeed attached great importance to her. This made Qi Yin even more suspicious of the barbaric blood-bone barbarian king's feelings towards Yiqing Luo. Just as he was talking about it, Yiqing Luo's hand that was playing with the soup suddenly paused. Who? A delicate rebuke came out from her mouth. Chapter 4251. Qi Yan's vision followed Yiqing Luo's gaze. A figure flashed past the door. It fluttered its wings and rushed out of the room. Very quickly, a man's groan was heard from outside. Man. Here. There was actually a man? Didn't she not see anyone along the way? Yiqing Luo's brows creased slightly as she sensitively sensed the surroundings. She quickly got up from the hot spring. Her arms stretched out and the robe that was hanging on the rack slid into her arms. She quickly put on the robe neatly and walked out of the room. The first thing he saw was Qi Yin flapping his wings and pecking at a man with force. The man hugged his head, dodging left and right as he cried out in pain. It was mixed with a few curses. He even stretched out his hand, trying to catch Qi Yin to vent his anger. Perhaps it was because the pecking was too painful. That man's expression was sinister as his palms surged with a powerful profound wave, striking directly towards Qi Yin. Qi Yin. Yiqing Luo's pupils tightened as she immediately shouted and stretched out her hand towards Qi Yin. Qi Yin spread its wings and nimbly avoided the man's palm and flew back to Yiqing Luo's body. Yiqing Luo caressed Qi Yan's phoenix feathers and heaved a sigh of relief when she saw that it wasn't injured. The current Qi Yin was probably the same as her. It could only maintain the size of this small pet. Furthermore, his power as a holy beast had been sealed. Who are you? Yiqing Luo held Qi Yin in her arms as she stared coldly at the man in front of her. The man had quickly retracted his palm the moment Yiqing Luo spoke and tidied up his appearance. When Yiqing Luo looked at him, he even straightened his back and put on a graceful look as he smiled at Yiqing Luo. Eldest young miss, Mr. Ren, why are you here? Suddenly, a hurried footsteps were heard. Gu Yun walked over with a tray in her hands. When she saw that man, the expression on her face turned extremely ugly. She went around to Yiqing Luo with a vigilant look. The man who was addressed as Mr. Ren fixed his gaze on Yiqing Luo as his lips were filled with smiles. Miss Yun, I heard that this Mr.'s fiancé has returned, so this Mr. naturally wanted to come over and take a look. What kind of person is this Mr.'s mysterious fiancé? As he spoke, he stroked his chin. Now that I've met her, I'm very satisfied with this fiancé of mine. Gu Yun's face turned even more ashen. She straightened her back and blocked the man's gaze. Regarding the engagement, Bone Lord did not personally state it. Young Master Ren, please conduct yourself with dignity. Don't ruin the reputation of my eldest miss. Ah. Miss Yun, Bone Lord has promised that whoever can rank first on the honor roll will marry eldest young mistress. In the entire old city, who else can it be other than me? The man's eyes were full of pride and complacency. Miss will be my fiancée sooner or later, won't you? Gu Yun was expressionless. The matter regarding the honor roll is merely a rumor spread by you and has nothing to do with Bone Lord. Moreover, Mr. Rin came uninvited and harassed eldest young mistress. Your behavior is that of a lecher. Bone Lord will not hand eldest young mistress over to you. The man's smile deepened when he heard that, there's no smoke without fire. If Bone Lord had not mentioned this matter, the outside world would not be so spread. Chapter 4252. Facing Gu Yun's anger, the man totally disregarded it. His naked gaze stared at Yi Qing Luo without any concealment. His eyes were filled with the man's evil smile. Earlier, although he had just neared the bathroom before he could steady his footsteps, he was already discovered by Yi Qing Luo. He was enveloped by a hazy mist again. But she couldn't stop his imagination. The young lady's face was devastatingly beautiful. Her fair jade-like skin was as smooth as a newborn baby's and her pink lips were slightly pursed, as though she was seducing him. Thinking back to the scene just now, where the water vapor had blurred everything in a flash, he felt a chill run down his spine. The man's eyes were almost bursting with evil fire. This naked gaze made Yi Qing Luo's slender brows crease tightly. Mr. Ren, don't go overboard. Gu Yun was infuriated by the man's shameless attitude as her face sunk. If this goes to Bone Lord, it won't end well. The man's expression changed slightly as his gaze also converged. But the gaze he used to look at Yi Qing Luo was still that. Wretched. He laughed mischievously. Miss Yun is such an intelligent person, I'm sure you understand. If this really goes to Bone Lord, eldest young Mrs. reputation. Ahaha. He was laughing as he rubbed his hands. You. Gu Yun gritted her teeth as she stared at him angrily. Shameless. To be able to gain the beauty's eyes, what's the harm in being shameless? The man pretended to be suave as he swept the hair on his forehead and even winked at Yi Qing Luo. Yi Qing Luo? Huge poison. Ugly rejection. If it wasn't for the fact that her profound energy was sealed for some unknown reason, she would definitely raise her fist to punch him. Her disgusted gaze naturally fell into the man's eyes. The man laughed loudly instead. I believe eldest young miss is very satisfied with this fiancé of yours. The last person who used such a disgusting gaze to look at me, do you know what happened to him? Yi Qing Luo was expressionless. Could it be? Eldest young miss kept him under your skirt? The man's gaze was fiery. Yi Qing Luo continued expressionless. That person's grave grass is already 6 feet tall. Ah. Ha ha ha. The man was stunned for a moment before he realized the meaning behind Yi Qing Luo's words as he couldn't help but burst out laughing. This master is very satisfied with you as my fiancé, very satisfied. Gu Yun's face was cold as she directly raised her hand and blocked in front of Yi Qing Luo, about to make a move against the man. The man suddenly turned around and left in another direction. He laughed as he walked. Gu Yun was so angry that she didn't know whether to put her hand down or not. Just like that, the man's figure disappeared from their line of sight. Even though the man had walked far away, his arrogant and excited laughter could still be heard. Gu Yun's expression changed again and again. Finally he put his hand down. She pursed her lips and bowed her head towards Yi Qing Luo to ask for forgiveness. Eldest young miss, I'm sorry. It's this servant who didn't guard the bathroom properly, giving the scoundrel an opportunity to take advantage. It's this servant who didn't protect you properly. I'm fine. Yi Qing Luo's gaze retracted from the direction where the man had left. She was suspicious of Gu Yun in the beginning. But just now, when facing that man, Gu Yun was serious about protecting her heart. If the man hadn't left in time, she was afraid that now Gu Yun would have fought with the man for her. After being disturbed by the man, she didn't have the mood to return to the pool to soak in the bath. She directly beckoned Gu Yun to leave. Chapter 4253. Gu Yun puffed up her cheeks, gritted her teeth and said, That's the Ren family's second young master, Ren Jiaming, one of the 4 great imperial families. He's an arrogant and despotic hedonistic disciple. Four great families. Capturing this piece of information, Yiqing Luo's pupils unconsciously enlarged in shock. Gu Yun thought that she was afraid of the reputation of the 4 great celestial families and hurriedly comforted her. Don't be afraid, young mistress. If young Master Ren still dares to mess around, Bone Lord will definitely not let him off. Although the Bone Sovereign has not appeared for a very long time, his prestige and his legend are unstoppable. Yiqing Luo blinked her eyes. He was completely dumbfounded. She didn't pay attention to what Gu Yun was saying. In his mind he kept repeating the words, 4 great heavenly clans. 4 great families. 4 great families. Fuck, isn't this the heaven realm? 4 great clans? Jiaojing. Pei Xing's main family, the Huangfu family, was also one of the 4 great families. The 4 great heavenly families that Gu Yun mentioned and the 4 great heavenly families that she knew should have 2 different meanings, right? Yiqing Luo's expression kept changing, becoming more and more steely green and more gloomy. Gu Yun saw this and panicked. Missy, you really don't have to be afraid of young Master Ren. Even if he is the 2nd young master of the Ren clan would definitely not dare to offend Bone Lord. The place we are at now is at the heaven realm. Yiqing Luo interrupted Gu Yun's words, held her arm and asked solemnly. Gu Yun was stunned by Yiqing Luo's solemn expression as she nodded stiffly, yes. Heavenly realm. She was actually in the heaven realm? The barbaric Blood-Bone King actually brought her to the heaven realm. What was he trying to do? What was his motive? What was he planning? Yiqing Luo swallowed hard and let go of Gu Yun. I want to see him. That he naturally referred to the barbaric Blood-Bone King. Gu Yun wanted to say something, but on seeing Yiqing Luo's gloomy and ugly expression, she assumed that she was disgusted by Ren jamming earlier and wanted to complain to Bone Lord. She didn't try to dissuade him. After sending him back to his room, she bowed and left. After the time it took for an incense stick to burn, Gu Yun came back with a strange expression. Yiqing Luo looked behind her but didn't see the barbaric Blood-Bone King's figure. Her expression darkened even further. Gu Yun deliberated over her words and comforted, Eldest Miss, Bone Monarch just sent a message back. He has something to do outside and needs to be busy for a few days. He will probably only return when the honor list opens. Yiqing Luo? He dared to bring her to the heaven realm. Afraid to come out and see her? Yiqing Luo started to suspect that the barbaric Blood-Bone King was hiding some huge secret in secret. Her face darkened, and the coldness in her eyes grew colder. Gu Yun hurriedly continued, Bone Monarch also ordered. Everything in the Gu residence will be managed by Eldest Mississippi. In the heaven realm, Eldest Miss doesn't need to fear anyone. You just need to be yourself. As she spoke, Gu Yun took out a domino from her bosom. Complex totems were carved on the dominoes. It was also faintly emitting a cool aura. With just a glance, one could tell that this was no ordinary object. Gu Yun passed the bone token to her. This is Bone Lord's token. This token can mobilize all the forces in the Bone residence. Yiqing Luo, the barbaric Blood-Bone King, was really ambitious. He directly handed over the control of the Bone residence to her. Wasn't he afraid that she would directly take over his forces in the heaven realm? Chapter 4254. Fight out. Very good, this is the style of the Blood-Bone Barbarian King. It seemed that Gu Yun's hatred for Ren jamming was quite deep. Yiqing Luo received the bone tile. It felt as if he had touched a block of ice. But very quickly, it was assimilated by the warmth of her fingertips. She held the domino card and looked it up and down. Her long and narrow eyes raised slightly. What did you mean by the wind cloud list just now? Why did he only come back when the wind cloud list opens? Young mistress doesn't know about the excellence list? Gu Yun's face was full of shock. This honor list is the most prestigious competition in our heaven realm. It is held once every 3 years. If you want to become famous and be loved and respected by others, then you must participate in this honor list. Only the top 100 will be chosen in every ranking list. As long as you can squeeze into the top 100, you will be in the top 100 of the entire heaven realm. Some people are favored by the heavens. If they lose on the excellence list, they will be abandoned. If someone has been miserable since a young age and is abandoned by others like a pair of worn-out shoes, if one can obtain a place on the honor list, then from now on, his future will be bright. The honor list determines a person's status, fame, and strength in the heaven realm. After Gu Yun explained in detail, she looked at Yi Qing Luo in astonishment. Why doesn't eldest young miss know about the wind cloud list? Yi Qing Luo pursed her lips and cursed in her heart. Can I say that I was forcibly brought from the earth realm to the heaven realm by your master? I'm completely clueless about anything in the heaven realm, okay? He complained in his heart, but he still put on a serious expression. I'm not interested in the wind cloud list. The surprise on Gu Yun's face was replaced by a smile. Eldest Miss has Bone Lord as her backing. Even if she is not on the wind and cloud list, all the great clans in the heaven domain have to respect eldest Mississippi. Yi Qing Luo expressed that she didn't want the backing of the barbaric Blood Bone King. As for Bone Lord's current whereabouts, this servant does not know. Gu Yun answered Yi Qing Luo's second question. Bone Monarch had not returned to the Bone residence for a long period of time, and there are many matters in the outside world waiting for Bone Monarch to settle. So Bone Monarch missed his appointment with eldest young Mississippi. Yi Qing Luo's eyelids drooped as she pondered over the deeper meaning behind Gu Yun's words. For a very long time, logically speaking, the Blood Bone Barbaric King had always been sealed in the Earth realm. Where did this heaven realm power come from? If it was a force from 10,000 years ago that had been passed down to the present, it was absolutely impossible for him to have such a reputation in the heaven realm even now, judging from Gu Yun's tone. The four great heavenly clans were all afraid of the existence of the Bone Mansion. This meant that, although the barbaric Blood Bone King's forces in the heaven realm had been established for some time, they were still in the modern era. It seemed like the barbaric Blood Bone Monarch was hiding a lot of secrets. When will the rankings start? Yi Qing Luo raised her brows and asked. Gu Yun, 1 more month. 1 month. In other words, the barbaric Blood Bone King would not return within a month? Did he really trust her to manage his power for a month? He wasn't afraid when he came back. All the forces have rebelled? Or, the forces were all destroyed by her? Where is the main entrance? Yi Qing Luo asked again. Gu Yun pointed in a direction. Yi Qing Luo tossed the bone tablet into the sky and caught it tightly, stuffing it into her sleeves. Let's go. She strode towards the main entrance. Gu Yun hurriedly followed. Eldest Miss, where are you going? Chapter 4255. The two figures gradually distanced as they walked out of the Gu residence. Two figures silently appeared at the place where Yi Qing Luo and Gu Yun were standing earlier. One was tall and straight like a mountain. The other was petite and slender. The lady's slightly dissatisfied voice rang. Gu Yi, why must Bone Lord pamper such a lady? Other than having a face which is still passable, which part of her is worthy of Bone Lord? Don't talk nonsense. The man who was addressed as Gu Yi berated sternly with a solemn expression. Bone Lord naturally has his own reasons for choosing her, and it's not up to us to make irresponsible remarks. I'm just feeling unhappy. The lady's eyes turned red from the berating as her voice turned softer. We can obviously follow Bone Lord to do things, but it's Bone Lord who arranged to protect such a weak lady? Enough. Gu Yi's face turned cold. We only need to obey Bone Lord's orders. Saying that, his figure swayed as he disappeared into thin air. The lady pouted her lips as she snorted indignantly. Aren't you feeling indignant as well? Why are you showing me that face? Ridicule was just ridicule. She was still very quick as she caught up to the man's figure. And all these, Yi Qing Luo, who had already left the Gu residence, had totally not noticed it. Her attention was attracted by the prosperous scene in front of her. This heaven realm was indeed the upper realm's middle-level realm. The passers-by, no matter if it was the street vendors or the passers-by, all of them were cultivators with dense, profound energy. These cultivators could be randomly picked out and placed in Nirvana realm. They were all legends who were worshipped like gods. Gu Yun followed behind her, not leaving her by even an inch. And the passers-by, when they saw Gu Yun, all of them respectfully took a detour. Whereas for Yi Qing Luo, who was able to make Gu Yun wait on her, naturally became the topic of discussion. I heard that Lord Bone Lord brought his niece back to the Gu residence. That young lady is Lord Bone Lord's niece? In the entire old city, who else can make Miss Yun take care of them so carefully? Previously, when I heard the news of Lord Bone Lord's niece, I thought it was fake, but I didn't expect. Lord Bone Lord really has a niece. The passers-by were all discussing. All sorts of discussions went past Yi Qing Luo's mind. Then her face darkened. He stopped and turned his head to look at Gu Yun. He asked with a dark expression, Niece? When did she become the niece of the barbaric Blood Bone King? She was still wondering why Gu Yun and Ren Jiaming kept calling her Missy, The blood-bone barbarian king had announced that she was his niece? Eldest Miss had lost her parents at a young age, and it was Bone Lord who had placed Eldest Miss in the dark to take care of her till now. Rather than saying he's a niece, this servant feels that Bone Lord is more like Eldest Miss' father. Gu Yun didn't hear the uneasiness in Yiqing Luo's words, but instead explained with a smile. A father? Father my ass. The blood-bone barbarian king really knew how to make up her identity. He had created such a persona for her. However, after hearing what Gu Yun said, Yiqing Luo was more or less able to accept the persona of niece. At the very least, it was better than the father and daughter persona. She had to call the blood-bone barbarian king daddy? Sorry, I can't do it. Yiqing Luo took a deep breath and forced herself to accept the niece persona. In any case, this persona allowed her, who had lost her profound strength, to still be able to use her connections to intimidate others in the heaven realm. Chapter 4256. Under all the attention. Yiqing Luo could only pretend not to see it. Many of the cultivators were not only curious about her identity. On top of that, she had a breathtakingly beautiful face and a unique temperament. Along the way, there were at least 100 cultivators following behind Yiqing Luo's butt. Some were in admiration. Some were in discussion. But it was probably because of Gu Yun's presence. No matter how curious they weren't within 5 steps away from Yiqing Luo. But the current tranquility didn't represent true tranquility. Based on Yiqing Luo's vivacious physique, how could she possibly have tranquility? As expected, just when the surroundings were in a state of chaos, a shrill and resentful little voice was heard. Get out of the way, this princess would like to see who this niece of Bone Lord who suddenly appeared out of nowhere is. When the cultivators heard this voice, they subconsciously moved their bodies aside. The expressions on their faces were very strange. When Gu Yun heard this voice, she couldn't help but muttered softly, "Oh no." Her footsteps also speedily turned in front of Yiqing Luo, blocking her figure. Yiqing Luo raised her eyelids and her gaze fell onto this obviously slender but resolutely blocked in front of her back figure. The strange emotions between her brows softened. Very quickly the crowd dispersed to the 2 sides, revealing a path. A 15 or 16-year-old lady walked over with elegant and confident steps. Her chin was raised high, like a high and mighty empress, looking down on all living beings. The lady was dressed in a luxurious dress with a bouquet of flowers. There were several layers of skirt from the inside to the outside, making her every step look like a lotus. Until the lady stopped in front of Yiqing Luo. The distance between the two of them was just 2 steps apart. The lady gave an exquisite low laugh. Her expression was slightly sinister and distorted. That pair of arrogant beautiful eyes sized up Yiqing Luo from head to toe. Just one look. The lady's eyes overflowed with jealousy. But very quickly she laughed coldly. You are the niece that Bone Lord mentioned? That tone was full of disdain. Yiqing Luo squinted her eyes slightly but didn't reply her. The woman was silent for a long time, but she did not get a response. Her expression immediately stiffened. Bone Lord's niece only has this much capability? This little ability, that little ability? Yiqing Luo raised her brows as she replied in a good mood. The woman clenched her fists tightly, and her knuckles creaked. You're courting death. She rebuked angrily as her face revealed a ferocious expression. With a backhand she struck out a palm directly towards Yiqing Luo's skull. Although Yiqing Luo had lost her profound energy, but his body retained the habit of fighting and his own senses. In the instant that the woman raised her palm, Lin Fan's eyes widened. Yiqing Luo could clearly feel the dense profound energy that was released from the lady's body. But she couldn't dodge. The profound practitioners who were watching the show in the surroundings watched with folded arms and only cared about watching the show. Or perhaps, he did not think that Bone Lord's niece was not a profound practitioner. All of them had the intention to probe Yiqing Luo. Moreover, in the heaven realm, it was extremely common for people to fight in public. Especially when it was nearing the critical juncture of the chart. Various powerhouses, large clans, large sects etc., had all sent out their most outstanding geniuses. It could be said, the entire old city, at least 80% of the geniuses were gathered. Any disagreement and they would start fighting. Any disagreement and they would start fighting. You're tuning in to the Han Li's Wuxia Adventures YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.